Welcome to a world where dragons can soar through the sky, political intrigue knows no bounds, and winter can last a lifetime. A world where power can be a double-edged sword, loyalty can be deadly, and honor is a rare and precious commodity. Welcome to the realm of Game of Thrones. This series captivated audiences around the globe, with its epic storytelling, complex characters, and breathtaking landscapes. In this video, we will journey through the 7 kingdoms and beyond to uncover some fascinating and lesser-known facts about this iconic fantasy series. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just curious to learn more, prepare to be enthralled by the secrets and surprises that lie within the Game of Thrones universe. Winter is coming, and so are a whole bunch of facts.
Winter is coming.
Welcome back to Cinematica. We've assembled more facts than we can count on 153 hands, which is to say 770, about Game of Thrones. This mega marathon consists of a bushel of classic Cinematica videos, detailing trivia, behind-the-scenes goodies, and a whole lot more from HBO's famed series. Let's get started. First up to bat, we're taking it all the way back to the start. The first season of Game of Thrones changed up the television landscape as we know it, and floored audiences all over the world. George R.R. Martin's fantastical world was brought to the screen with such gusto and such intrigue. Folks didn't know that TV could be like this. Of course, Cinematica gathered up some facts to help deepen everyone's understanding of the show. Released in March of 2016 to the tune of 1.5 million views, this is 107 Game of Thrones Season 1 facts you should know.
Since its debut on HBO in 2011, Game of Thrones has become a cultural phenomenon, gaining fans worldwide, including presidents and prime ministers. Controversial and addictive, Game of Thrones is one of the most talked about and well-known shows in the world. Think you know everything there is to know about the world of Westeros? Think again. I'm Rob Bradford, and I'm here to bring you Cinematica's 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 1. Let's get started. Number 1. Game of Thrones is adapted from the series of books called A Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin's super popular fantasy novels, the first of which is entitled A Game of Thrones. Number 2. George R.R. Martin was known for writing difficult-to-film scripts for film and television and was so disillusioned with the process, he's actually quoted as saying he wrote Game of Thrones to be unfilmable. Seems like he was right, and HBO is the only network that could pull it off. Number 3. According to David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators of the HBO series, they started trying to get the books adapted in 2006 after falling in love with the first book. Weiss even claims he finished the 1,000-page novel in, quote, maybe 36 hours. Number 4. Prior to Game of Thrones, Benioff was best known for adapting his novel 25th Hour for Spike Lee's brooding post-9/11 drama starring Edward Norton and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Not a bad pedigree. Number 5. They successfully pitched the series to HBO and even convinced George R.R. Martin, a veteran screenwriter himself, in the course of a 5-hour meeting in a restaurant to agree to the idea. Benioff recalled they won Martin over with their answer to his question, who is Jon Snow's mother? Spoiler alert, people, we think R plus L equals J. Number 6. It took 4 years to bring Game of Thrones to your TV. HBO started developing the series in 2007, but the process of adapting the stories, casting the show, and actually producing the enormous pilot took forever. Number 7. George R.R. Martin actually writes one episode every season. In Season 1, he wrote The Pointy End, which is a reference to the sword-fighting lesson Jon Snow gave Arya before leaving for the Wall. Number 8. The first season is a near completely faithful adaptation of the novel. It's certainly the closest the series ever stayed to the original material. Number 9. Most fantasy novels have a vaguely British medieval look and feel, but did you know the principal inspiration for Game of Thrones look and feel is really specific? Martin had suggested the English War of the Roses between the houses of Lancaster and York are reflected in the houses of Lannister and Stark. Number 10. Believe it or not, George R.R. Martin also credits his pet turtles with inspiring Game of Thrones. He's told several media outlets he has 5 or 6 of them in an aquarium with a tiny castle. He used to fantasize about the Turtle Kingdom and all of its wars. This became the foundation for the novels. Number 11. Martin has also suggested the Wall is based on Hadrian's Wall of Roman Britain, effectively the northern border of the Roman Empire. Number 12. The Sopranos in Middle-earth is the tagline that showrunner David Benioff jokingly suggested for Game of Thrones, referring to its intrigue-filled plot and its dark tone combined with a fantasy setting that incorporates some magic and dragons. Number 13. The original pilot of the show has never been aired as it was considered an epic disaster. It's currently unavailable anywhere online. 90% of it was reshot by Tim Van Patten, who was, not coincidentally, a major directing force on The Sopranos. Number 14. Like the novels it adapts, Game of Thrones has a sprawling ensemble cast, estimated to be the largest on television. In the first season, there were around 20 principal characters, and by the time season 3 rolled around, 250 cast names were listed. Number 15. When casting Game of Thrones, Benioff and Weiss looked at up to 200 people for each role. Sean Bean and Peter Dinklage, however, were just straight up offered their roles. Producers never really considered others. Number 16. Sean Bean, who plays Ned Stark, was one of the very first actors cast, and the only actor considered for the role. For most viewers, he was the only recognizable face in the new series. The producers knew that and placed his mug all over the promotion. Number 17. Bean was best known in the States from his role as Boromir in Lord of the Rings and as James Bond 007's enemy, Janice in GoldenEye. Number 18. Mark Addy was later cast as King Robert Baratheon. He was best known for his role in the 90s British comedy classic Full Monty. Number 19. The devilishly handsome Jaime Lannister, the finest sword in all of Westeros, is played by Danish actor Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Dragons and Fantasy, he was quoted as saying, "I didn't think it was going anywhere." Little did he know he would be the most popular murderous, incestuous heartthrob in TV history. Number 20. Queen Cersei Lannister is played by Lena Headey, best known as Queen Gorgo from the film 300 and its sequel. She's awfully good at being queen, isn't she? Although both queens she portrays are very strong women, they couldn't be more different. Headey has claimed, at her Cersei core is just fear and paranoia, and that's where she behaves from. And Gorgo doesn't come from that place at all. Gorgo's for the people. Number 21. Headey is good friends with Peter Dinklage, who she has stated first pitched the role of Cersei Lannister to her. Number 22, Emilia Clarke was cast as Mother of Dragons Daenerys Targaryen after the original disastrous pilot was trashed. On top of being fantastic in the role, Clarke was named Esquire's Sexiest Woman Alive in 2015. Number 23, for some reason, Clarke says she did the funky chicken and the robot dance during her audition. Any idea why? I sure don't. Number 24, Game of Thrones has actual ties to English history. Did you know Harry Lloyd, who played Daenerys' brother Viserys before he received his crown of gold, shall we say, is actually the great-great-great-great-grandson of Charles Dickens, writer of literary classics A Tale of Two Cities and A Christmas Carol. Number 25, the production had just one chance to get Viserys' famous gold crown death scene because the gold paint would destroy his costume, made further complicated by the smoke packs on his chest and back that had to release at the exact right time. They nailed it, and a horrifying but awesome death scene was on celluloid forever. Number 26, Kit Harington plays fan favorite the bastard Jon Snow, and this was his first television role ever. A recent drama grad, Harington had only been in plays before landing the critical role. Number 27, the man we all know as Jon Snow almost chose a camera over the sword. Prior to becoming an actor, Kit had plans to become a war correspondent or a cameraman. We're certainly glad he had a change of heart. Number 28, Kit's unusual name may have hinted at his future in the arts. His mom named him after William Shakespeare. Well, she named him after Christopher Kit Marlowe, whom many believe was the real Shakespeare. Number 29, one more fascinating fact about Kit Harington, his great-great-grandpa invented the toilet. Kit Harington was a 16th century poet and inventor who conceived and built the first flushing toilet. Number 30, every bastard born in the North is given the surname Snow, hence Jon Snow. Bastards from Westeros' other kingdoms are given different surnames: Rivers in the Riverlands, Stone in the Vale, Hill in the Westerlands, Storm in the Stormlands, Sand in Dorne, Flowers in the Reach, Pike on the Iron Islands, and Waters in the areas surrounding King's Landing. Number 31. One more important fact for the newbies, the Faith of the Seven is actually a monotheistic religion, with each of the 7 deities representing a part of the one same God. They are the Mother, the Maiden, the Crone, the Father, the Warrior, the Smith, and the Stranger, who represents death. Number 32, Sophie Turner, who plays Sansa Stark, got a B in drama. She had a tutor on the set of Game of Thrones until the age of 16. Number 33, Arya Stark was actress Maisie Williams' first professional acting job. Her first love was actually dance, which explains her grace and speed in learning to use needle. Number 34, fans love Arya for her toughness and determination, but Maisie Williams has plenty of her own. She's naturally right-handed, but learned to fight left-handed after learning from her parents that Arya is left-handed in the books. Number 35, Alfie Allen, who plays Theon, is the older brother of British singer-songwriter Lily Allen, who apparently was offered a role on Game of Thrones in later seasons as Theon's sister Tara, who he tries to seduce, which she quickly turned down for, obvious reasons. Number 36. Hey, did you know that the Allens are also the third cousins of Stay With Me singer Sam Smith? There's too much talent in that family. That's not fair. Number 37. Bronn, the 80s pop star? Jerome Flynn, who plays the mercenary Bronn, was in the 90s doo-wop duo called Robson and Jerome. They had 3 #1 singles in the the UK. Who would have thunk it? Number 38. Christian Nairn, who plays Hodor on the show, is actually a DJ, singer, guitarist, and performance artist. Wait, all that talent and they just make him say Hodor all the time? Number 39. The actor who plays Maester Aemon of the Night's Watch, Peter Vaughn, is legally blind in real life, just like the character he portrays on the show. Number 40. In the show, Jack Gleeson plays the tyrannical young King Joffrey, one of the best villains in modern TV. In real life, however, Gleeson is known as a polite, talented leader, as a founder and artistic director of Collapsing Horse Theatre Company, which is based in Dublin. Number 41. After the first episode aired, Gleeson received a letter from George R.R. Martin that read, "Congratulations, everybody hates you." Gleeson took it with stride, laughing about it in newspapers and on talk shows. Number 42. The mighty Khal Drogo was played by Jason Momoa. Before Game of Thrones, he was best known for Stargate Atlantis, where he had epic dreads. Just look at those things. Number 43. So have you ever wondered about his gnarly scar? Back in 2008, Momoa was unfortunately slashed in the face with a broken beer glass by another customer at the Birds Cafe, a Hollywood, California tavern. He received around 140 stitches during the reconstructive surgery. Number 44. Khal Drogo's powerful fight scene in which he kills a Dothraki named Maego was written at actor Jason Momoa's request. He thought showing Khal Drogo's strength would be more powerful than just hearing others talk about it, and he wanted to show off those muscles. Number 45. By the beard of Poseidon, Momoa is about to be Aquaman in the DC universe. His first appearance will be in the Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice film, followed by his own spin-off. Number 46. Fan favorite Tyrion is played by Peter Dinklage, best known for his breakout role in the indie film The Station Agent. Dinklage as Tyrion was so popular, in fact, that he was given top billing on the show going into season 2. Number 47. Dinklage doesn't get the books? In 2014, he said on The Late Show with David Letterman that he had once tried to read the books the show is based upon, but got confused. He joked, "George Martin, our author, is probably going to kill my character soon because I mentioned that." Number 48. Fun fact, Dinklage also voiced the sexy wake-up guy on the Seinfeld episode The Wink. Mind blown. Number 49. Before Game of Thrones, both Benioff and Weiss had only written for film. This resulted in several first-season episodes being about 10 minutes too short for HBO, forcing them to write another 100 pages of scripts during the final 2 weeks of pre-production. Number 50. Because the show's budget could not be adjusted for these additional 100 pages, Benioff and Weiss had to set many of the scenes in a single room with only a couple actors speaking. Some of the best scenes came out of these 100 pages, including the brutally honest scene between Robert and Cersei Baratheon. Number 51. The producers initially considered shooting the whole series in Scotland, but eventually chose Northern Ireland because of the availability of studio space on top of just stunning scenery. Scotland didn't lose out entirely, though. The legendary Doune Castle was used as Winterfell. Fun trivia, it was also the primary location in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Number 52. Doune isn't entirely Winterfell. The courtyard of Winterfell is actually a parking lot, and the crypts under Winterfell are actually a wine cellar. Number 53. The first season's southern scenes were filmed in Malta, a change in location from the sets of Morocco used for the pilot episode, one of the many changes from the doomed original pilot. Number 54. The president of Malta lent the production his summer home, which became Master Ilario's home. No one was let inside, but they were allowed to film on his patios and in his gardens, which doubled as the gardens for the Red Keep. Number 55. For the scene in Winter is Coming, in which Ned and company find a dead stag, the production used an actual dead stag. It had been dead for 2 days and apparently smelled like it too, so the actors' reactions were genuine. Number 56. The stag being skinned by Tywin Lannister in You Win or You Die was also a real stag, and also actually skinned by Tywin's actor Charles Dance. He learned how to do it earlier that day. It is a fantastic introduction to one of the most dangerous characters on the show. The stag is also the sigil of House Baratheon. Can you say foreshadowing? Number 57. While we're on the subject of real or fake, Lisa Stark is wearing a prosthetic front piece when she breastfeeds her terror of a son, the 8-year-old Robin. Number 58. Game of Thrones has won 2 Emmys and been nominated 5 times for Best Costumes. Their success comes from combining detailed medieval period research with bold, outside-of-the-box ideas like... Number 59. Some actors are dressed in fish scales. The show's costumes are inspired by many cultures, including ancient Japanese and Persian cultures. One wild example, Dothraki outfits resemble the Bedouins. One was made out of fish skins to resemble dragon scales, and then the wildlings wear animal skins inside out, just like the Inuits. Number 60. Wildling bone armor is made of molds taken from real bones and assembled with string and latex resembling catgut. It's a material used for the strings of some musical instruments, made from the dried, twisted intestines of sheep or horses. Number 61. Game of Thrones has a huge hair budget. About 24 wigs are used for the actresses. Number 62. Made of human hair and up to 2 feet in length, they cost up to $7,000 each and are washed and styled just like real hair. Number 63. It takes some time to get Daenerys looking so good. Emilia Clarke requires about 2 hours to style her brunette hair with a platinum blonde wig and braids to get her into that mother of dragons look. Number 64. For the largest large amount of visual effects in the series, HBO hired VFX teams in Great Britain and Ireland who specialize in something called 2.5D projection mapping. The basic idea is taking 2D images, like a photo, and through algorithms turning it into a 3D landscape. Number 65. Not all of the effects in Game of Thrones are high-tech. The pool in Winterfell Godswood was filled with black paint, so it would be as dark and reflective as possible. Number 66. The Westerosi characters of Game of Thrones speak British English, often, but not always, with the accent of the English region whose geographic location corresponds to the character's Westerosi region. For instance, Ned Stark as Warden of the North speaks in actor Sean Bean's native northern accent, while the Southern Lord Tywin Lannister speaks with a southern accent. Number 67. Characters foreign to Westeros are often played with a non-British accent, and sometimes producers make up their whole own language. Linguist David J. Peterson was hired to develop the Dothraki and Valyrian languages based on just a few words used in Martin's novels. Number 68. The Dothraki language has over 3,000 words. Number 69. The BBC estimated that over the lifetime of the series, Game of Thrones' fictional languages were heard by more people than the Welsh, Irish, Scots, and Gaelic languages combined. Number 70. Let's talk puppies! The direwolves on the first season of the show were played by Northern Inuit dogs which were crossbred in the 80s in an attempt to create a domestic dog closely resembling a wolf. Number 71. The powerful, terrifying direwolves were so sweet that Sansa, Sophie Turner, adopted the dog who played her wolf in season 1. Aww. The dog's real name is Zoni and is now a minor social media star thanks to Sophie's pictures. Number 72. Direwolves are real. Well, they were real about 10,000 years ago, and they weighed up to 175 pounds. They must have been terrifying. Number 74. Peter Dinklage is a vegetarian. All the meat he eats on the show isn't real. It's tofu. He even narrated a PETA PSA about facing your food. Number 73. We may have found your next Valentine's Day gift for your significant other. The horse heart Daenerys ate for Khal Drogo on the show was actually a 3-pound mass of gummy bear-like substance. Watch those cavities, Khaleesi. Number 75. Amelia Clarke admitted that she got literally stuck to a toilet seat when covered in fake blood while filming that sequence. Number 76. The severed head of George W. Bush appears in a couple scenes in the first season of the show. HBO was not pleased and issued an apology for what they called an unacceptable, disrespectful thing to do. Number 77. Blood, guts, and gore run aplenty throughout season 1 of Game of Thrones. In a 2012 study of deaths per episode, the series was listed second out of 40 recent US TV drama series with an average of 14 deaths per episode, making it one of the most violent shows in the history of TV. Number 78. Usually it's a good idea to fast forward through a show's title sequence, but not with Game of Thrones. The series title sequence was created by production studio Elastic for HBO and received the 2011 Emmy Award for main title design. The sequence actually changes several times per season, highlighting different areas of the fictional world featured prominently in each episode. Number 79. This show, through its cast members, has countless ties to prominent historic English figures. Number 80. Nudity and violence has been a trademark of the show since season 1. But did you know the show was credited with inventing the phrase sexposition, which basically means revealing important plot points of a story while tons of gratuitous sex is happening. Number 81. The stunning opening title sequence is filled with beautiful imagery and cool Easter eggs for the series fans. If you look closely, you'll see an astrolabe showing the complicated history of the throne, and next to each actor's name is the symbol of the house their characters belong to in the show. Number 82. According to producer Greg Spence, there is a mad monk in the Westeros world who is famed for his textured maps of Westeros. This concept was the inspiration for the game-like three-dimensional images in the opening credits sequence. Number 83. The iconic opening score is composed by series composer Ramin Djawadi, who previously composed the score for the first Iron Man. Number 84. The theme song is played on instruments that are medieval appropriate, dark, and rich. Violins, lutes, cellos, and even a chorus of 20 women to give it a gothic, ethereal feel. For a deeper dive, check out a podcast called Song Exploder. Ramin explains every layer of the song. Number 85. Benioff and Weiss actually banned Djawadi from using any flutes in his score, feeling they were too cliche. Number 86. Magister Illyrio owns paintings of cannons, which aren't used in the Game of Thrones universe. A crew member pointed this out to Weiss, who had the solution. Magic, of course. Number 87. The men-at-arms that Caitlin hired on the episode Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things are named Larry's, Curlkit, and Moar, after the Three Stooges. Number 88. Speaking of Catelyn Stark, she's played by Michelle Fairley, who appears in the Harry Potter films as Hermione Granger's mom. Number 89. The beloved character from the books Old Nan disappears after her second episode because actor Margaret John sadly passed away. In the novels, she makes it a bit longer before being presumed dead. The episode Lord Snow is dedicated to her memory. Number 90. One of the amazing pieces of set design is the fabled Iron Throne. It took the props team 2 months to build it, and it takes 4 people to move and is over 8 feet tall. Number 91. Legend has it some iconic swords have found their way into the Iron Throne, including Orlando Bloom's from Kingdom of Heaven and Glamdring, Gandalf's sword from The Lord of the Rings. Number 92. In the books, the Iron Throne is enormous and made of 1,000 swords. For the show, Benioff and Weiss wanted to look more realistic, so it's much smaller. They brilliantly explained this by having Littlefinger shatter the notion of 1,000 swords by claiming it's less than 200 because he's counted personally. Number 93. Earlier we mentioned R plus L equals J, the extremely popular fan theory about Jon Snow's lineage. When Jon Snow is telling Sam about his mom, the letters RL can be seen on a wooden post nearby. Sneaky, sneaky. Number 94. Before he receives his golden crown, Viserys name drops a legendary dragon, Vermithrax, while he's trying to impress his prostitute. This is a reference to Vermithrax pejorative from the 1981 fantasy film Dragon Slayer, which Martin believes is the best dragon ever put on film. Number 95. As Maester Luwin explains to Bran during Season 1, many people think that the words of House Lannister are, "A Lannister always pays his debts." But that's just a popular saying about the family. The actual words of House Lannister are, "Hear me roar." Number 96. Martin has been quoted as saying that Game of Thrones is more of a response to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings than a tribute. Martin wanted to know what King Aragorn's tax policy was going to be, or whether or not he would keep a standing army. Instead of asking Tolkien, which is obviously impossible, he just wrote his own version. Number 97. The series premiere of Game of Thrones aired on HBO on April 17th, 2011, which was coincidentally Sean Bean's birthday. Number 98. In 2013, TV Guide named the execution of Ned Stark the second greatest twist of all time, just beyond the ending of the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man. It would not be the last accolade for the show. Number 99. Game of Thrones emerged as a critically acclaimed hit with respectable viewership. The first season had an average of 2.5 million viewers on Sunday nights, but thanks to its incredible growth in popularity, each episode now has nearly 4 times as many people watching live every Sunday. Number 100. Game of Thrones was nominated for 13 2011 Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Drama Series. It won 2 Emmys that year, one for Peter Dinklage's portrayal of Tyrion Lannister, and one for that incredible opening title sequence. Number 101. Game of Thrones did more than just win awards, it inspired a new wave of baby names. In fact, more than 150 babies were named Khaleesi in 2012, and Arya is the fastest growing baby name in the United States. Number 102. Game of Thrones influenced the critics who cover the show as well. Critics Miles McNutt coined the term sexposition to describe the scenes on Game of Thrones where characters feed the audience information against a backdrop of sex or nudity. It's a hallmark of adult television now. Number 103. Fans are so enamored with the show, online cookbooks have been made dedicated to the food on the show, and the series even has its own inspired blonde ale. Number 104. The show's impact stretches into the animal kingdom as well. Game of Thrones and Twilight are thought to be responsible for a huge increase in husky and Malamute ownership. Rescue organizations say, however, that many owners aren't prepared for the amount of time and attention these breeds require. Number 105. The novels and now the show have gained some famous fans at all levels of influence. President Barack Obama, British Prime Minister David Cameron, and former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard have all pledged their love of Westeros. Number 106. Even the Dutch Foreign Minister Frans Timmermans is swept up in Game of Thrones. He's quoted the novels extensively in a speech titled, "What Can We Learn from Game of Thrones?" Number 107. Do not ask George R.R. Martin what happens if he dies. It drives him nuts. For the record, once and for all, yes, Martin has told Benioff and Weiss how the story ends just in case of his untimely demise, and they are the only 2 people who know other than Martin. So don't worry, fellow super fans, we're covered.
We'll keep things going with the next edition of 107 Facts. This is 107 Game of Thrones Season 2 Facts You Should Know.
Last week, we took a deep dive into the 10 episodes that started it all, Game of Thrones Season 1. We heard all about how the debut season was a smashing success, but what would that mean for Season 2? Especially after the shocking loss of Season 1's leading man, Sean Bean. Think you know the whole story? Think again. It's just some random guy with Cinematica, and we're giving you the inside scoop on how the cast and crew behind Game of Thrones followed up their epic first season with even more brutality, blood, and mind mind-blowing bombshells. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just wondering what all the fuss is about, we've got something for everyone as we count down the 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 2. Let's get started. Number 1. In an unprecedented move, HBO ordered the second season of Game of Thrones just 2 days after the series premiere, all thanks to the pilot's critical acclaim. Number 2. Just like the first, series creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss served as head writers and showrunners for the second season. Together, they wrote 6 out of the 10 episodes. Number 3. Actor Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion Lannister, was given top billing in Season 2 after winning an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and more for his incredible performance as the rejected but capable royal in Season 1. Bow down to the Dink. Number 4. Fan favorite Dinklage is the only actor that appeared in every episode of the second season. Number 5. In order to afford the incredible scope of the season, notably the Battle of the Blackwater, Benioff and Weiss, quote, pleaded on bended knee, unquote, to receive a 15% increase in the season's budget, taking the budget for the season all the way up to $70 million. Number 6. The $7 million per episode allowed creators to expand filming locations, adding Croatia and Iceland to their home base of Northern Ireland. Number 7. King's Landing was represented by the ancient Croatian port city of Dubrovnik, which is home to the most famous haunted island in the world, Doxa. Google it. It's real and it's terrifying. Number 8. Producers also filmed scenes of Qarth and Slaver's Bay around Dubrovnik, as the port's various landscapes can provide both an isolated appearance, Qarth, and the appearance of a more bustling trade center like Slaver's Bay. Number 9. One amazing pain in the ass, Dubrovnik is an old, beautifully walled city. Unfortunately, that means there are no elevators, so any gear or set dressing had to be carried by hand up dozens or even hundreds of flights of stairs. Number 10. Speaking of exotic landscapes, the crew was allowed to shoot on actual glaciers in protected national parks in order to film the Night's Watch expedition beyond the wall. Number 11. Following in the footsteps of the first book and season, Season 2 was based on the second book in the series, A Clash of Kings. Producers strayed a little from the book's storyline, holding off on introducing certain pivotal characters like the psychotic Ramsay Snow until they were central to the show's plot. Number 12. In adapting Clash of Kings, producers altered age and ethnicities as well. For instance, Salador San, the slick, savvy pirate, was white in the book, but played by African-American actor Lucien Masamati on the show. Hardcore HBO fans may recognize him from the #1 ladies detective agency. Number 13. For the second year in a row, Game of Thrones had the biggest cast on television with over 250 speaking roles. Number 14. HBO made its first new casting of the season with Natalie Dormer in the role of Marjorie Tyrell. Audiences may recognize her as Anne Boleyn from Showtime's The Tudors. She joined Game of Thrones after her character on The Tudors was beheaded, so she's used to the gore. Number 15. The Greyjoy family expands this season as we meet Theon's sister Yara, played by the crazy talented Gemma Whelan. She's best known for her roles in the films Gulliver's Travels and The Wolfman. Number 16. Yara was named Asha in the novels, but producers changed the character's name so she wouldn't be confused with Osha. If you remember, producers did the same with young Lord Robin of the Vale, changing his name from Robert so he wouldn't be confused with Robert Baratheon. We still managed to find something to be confused about, though. Number 17. Yara was first offered to British pop singer Lily Allen, who was the real-life sister of Theon, aka Alfie Allen. Number 18. Lily Allen turned down the role because of the light incest the part required. Allen said she felt uncomfortable because she would have had to go on a horse, and he would have, quote, touched her up and shit, end quote. Good call, Lily. Number 19. Valentoy Harbor, the location where Theon Greyjoy returns to the Iron Islands in Season 2, is still a working harbor in Northern Ireland. Pretty impressive considering it was built in the 1700s. Number 20. The crabby and bitter Balon Greyjoy, Theon and Yara's father, is played by the incomparable Patrick Malahide, a Brit with over 113 credits to his name. King of the Ironborn has been around the block. Remember him from Billy Elliot? He played a crabby, bitter school principal. Typecast much? Number 21. This is important and will come into play later, so pay attention. The Greyjoys have a rich history as pirates and plunderers. Quellan, Balon's father, was a moderate who forbade plundering to keep peace with Westeros. But Balon reinstated aggression, strengthening his self-proclaimed kingdom. In the Game of Thrones, you win or you die, and you also reap what you sow. Number 22. One confusing aspect of this season was Balon's apparent hatred for Theon upon his return. Well, here's what's up. Balon lost his rebellion against King Robert Baratheon and had to retreat to the Iron Islands with his tail between his legs. And to keep him in check, he received the ultimate humiliation. His only surviving son was taken and given to Ned Stark as a sort of insurance policy against future attacks. Theon's return is a reminder of the massive, humiliating defeat that defines Balon's reign. Number 23. Let's stay upon the narrow sea. Irish actor Liam Cunningham was cast as Davos, a fan favorite from the novels for his self-deprecation and fealty to Stannis. Cunningham was an electrician for years before trying acting in his late 20s. Number 24. Davos's last name is Seaworth, but his nickname is much more interesting. He's known as the Onion Knight because of his legendary smuggling of onions and other food that helped keep Stannis' army alive during a previous siege. This isn't really talked about on the show, but covered in more detail in the book. Number 25. The Onion Knight is missing the fingertips on his right hand. In the book, it's his left hand, but Liam Cunningham is left-handed, so it would have been a whole thing. This is a punishment for his past crimes of smuggling and was required by Stannis in order to earn knighthood for his current smuggling that kept Stannis' army alive. Number 26. The role of Melisandre is played by Carice van Houten, a Dutch actress known for her roles both on stage and screen. She previously appeared in the movies Valkyrie and Repo Men. Number 27. Carice was originally offered the role of Cersei Lannister. Fortunately for Lena Headey and her fans, Van Houten was forced to turn down the role. She was in the process of filming a Dutch comedy when filming for Cersei's role began. Number 28. Van Houten is also a published pop rock singer. Though it's her passion, when asked if fans would ever hear Melisandre sing on the show, she laughed, "Yeah, but can you see Melisandre singing in a cave? Like, 'Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the night is dark and full of terrors. Let's go!' To answer her question, no. No, we can't. Number 29. Melisandre and Seaworth had a thing at one point. Well, not exactly. Cunningham had previously played Van Houten's lover in the 2011 film Black Butterflies. You know you're a true Game of Thrones fan if you're having a real hard time imagining such a pairing. Van Houten joked about this on Twitter, posting an image from the film and tweeting to her fans, "Davos and Melisandre, don't say they didn't try, #Black Butterflies." Number 30. British actor Stephen Delane joined the cast in Season 2 as Stannis. US audiences might know him as Thomas Jefferson in HBO's John Adams. Number 31. Delane is also the father of actor Frank Delane. Harry Potter fans know and love Frank as the young Tom Marvolo Riddle, and he's previously appeared in Sense8 and Fear the Walking Dead. The Delanes also had the pleasure of acting alongside one another in the independent film Papadopoulos and Sons. Number 32. Gwendolyn Christie was cast as the righteous Brienne of Tarth. George R.R. Martin was so stoked by her casting that he broke the news himself on his website. Number 33. Christie joined the cast as a relatively unknown actress whose most recognizable credit at the time was the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Number 34. To show producers she was serious about the role, Christie gave up alcohol and red meat, started drinking protein shakes, and underwent kickboxing, yoga, and stamina training exercises on her own. She says she packed on 15 pounds of lean muscle for the part. Number 35. The wardrobe department helped Christie transform into Brienne by creating armor filled with lines that distract the audience's eyes away from her hips in hopes of giving her a boxier, more masculine figure. Number 36. Christie stands at an astounding 6 foot 3 inches. She says while people used to approach her and say, "Excuse me, how tall are you?" Christie says now they say, "Excuse me, are you in Game of Thrones?" And that is delightful. I can die happy. Number 37. Christie does not know her age. No, we're not joking because we don't think she was either. She said no one knows, not even her mum, and that she's lost track. The verdict is still out, but IMDb lists the year as 1978. No month or day, though. Curious. Number 38. Christie was bullied as a kid for her unusual height and, in her own words, appearing a bit androgynous. She believes the role of Brienne can help others with similar experiences deal with their own pain and find strength in their differences. You go, girl. Number 39. For all the true HBO fans out there, here's something to chew on. TV critic Maureen Ryan wrote a fascinating piece about the links between Brienne of Tarth and Omar of Baltimore, as in The Wire. Despite being worlds apart, literally, she wrote that both are outsiders who live by a code for better or worse, and therefore make random acts of violence curiously attractive. Number 40. Hannah Murray filled the role of Gilly, Craster's daughter and Samwell Tarly's love interest. Murray was known, at least to the younger Thrones audience, for her role in the hit television series Skins, the British cast, of course. Number 41. Rose Leslie beat out a massive room of redheads to win over the role of Ygritte, Jon Snow's love interest. Leslie said her brothers and sister, huge fans of the show, freaked out more than her. Number 42. While Conan Stevens played the part for a couple episodes in Season 1, Ian White took on the role of Gregor Clegane in Season 2. White was no newcomer to the Thrones set. He had previously played a giant and a White Walker in past episodes. Number 43. Standing above everyone at a great 7 feet 1 inch, White is one of the tallest Game of Thrones cast members, and maybe people in the world? Number 44. Ian White had previously used his talents and height to take on the role of Madame Maxime in full body shots for the 4th Potter film, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Number 45. Before getting into acting, White was a professional basketball player. He played at the collegiate level in the States and then professionally in England, his country of origin. Number 46. Scottish actor John Stahl joined the cast in Season 2 as Rickard Karstark. Stahl's previous film credits included Loch Ness and the Jimmy Boyle biopic A Sense of Freedom. Number 47. Actor Tom Wallachia was cast as Jaqen H'ghar. Wallachia made headlines between seasons recently by suggesting H'ghar and Arya's first meeting was not a coincidence. Post your theories in the comments. Number 48. One missing scene from the book is the Weasel soup scene, wherein Jaqen dumps a kettle of hot soup over the guards holding Arya, allowing her and others to escape. Number 49. Game of Thrones doesn't mind casting the occasional adult film star. Sahara Knight was brought in to play a prostitute in Littlefinger's brothel and ends up with Bronn just before the Battle of the Blackwater. Number 50. Maisie D, another British porn actor, was also cast in the role of a prostitute, this one famously being on the receiving end of Joffrey's sadism. Number 51. Roy Dotrice, who narrates the Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks, was cast as Helene the Pyromancer in Season 2. Dotrice was originally supposed to play the role of Grand Maester Pycelle in Season 1, but unfortunately, he became ill shortly before shooting began and was replaced by Julian Glover. Number 52. When Sarah McKeever first appeared in Game of Thrones as Stannis' slightly deranged wife Selyse in the Season 2 premiere The North Remembers, she had no dialogue and went uncredited. Due to time constraints, the production team wanted to wait to officially introduce the character in Season 3, at which point Sarah was out and Tara Fitzgerald was cast in the role. Sorry, Sarah. Number 53. The enormous and expanding world of the show required some fancy scheduling. Filming took place over the course of 106 shooting days, but required 2 completely separate crews working at the same time in different countries. The crews were nicknamed Wolf and Dragon. Number 54. Alright, so let's get into the nitty-gritty details. This season was enormous because we're seeing the full scope of just how many people think they have a claim to the Iron Throne, hence the book's title, Clash of Kings. Joffrey is trying to hold on to the throne, and the challengers are Stannis Baratheon, who has a good bloodline argument, Robb Stark, who has revenge on his mind but a weak claim, Balon, who has like 0 right to the Iron Throne but is gonna try anyway, Renly Baratheon, who does have some legitimacy, and finally the young upstart Daenerys Targaryen, mother of dragons and all-around badass. Number 55. Speaking of dragons, their names are Drogon, named after Khal Drogo, her dead husband, Viserys, named after her awful, miserable dead brother, and Rhaegal, named after her dead older brother. Symbolism alert, she's surrounded by her dead loved ones who have been reborn, so to speak. She's gonna be tough to beat. Number 56. Let's talk dragons. Actress Emilia Clarke first has to play with a bright green blob on the end of a stick called a stuffy. This is removed and painted over with the CGI dragons in layers. First a skeleton, then muscle tissue layers for texture, and finally the finishing touches are added, making each dragon look colorful and dirty. Number 57. Creators of the effects is Pixamondo, based in Germany. Believe it or not, they studied young geese and bats with really big wings. I see it. A big question Pixamondo wrestled with: how do teenage dragons fly? They created wind tunnel simulations and ended up with a mix of eagle and bat movements, eagles for soaring and bats for taking off. Number 59. The first episode, The North Remembers, shows us the red comet that all characters can see streaking slowly above them. The comet is known as the Red Sword, a sign of the Red God, and emerged shortly after Daenerys' dragons were born. Number 60. Speaking of the Red God, the Red Priestess Melisandre becomes a major player this season. Though her history is fleshed out in the books, not so much in the show. Here's an important fact, though. She is magic, but she is not infallible. While she can birth a ghost of Stannis, she cannot accurately see the future. More on that in future episodes. Number 61. The big point about Melisandre's rise is this. In her religion, the Red God is the only one who has the power to fight the ice-hearted hordes gathering to steal the world from the living. Without going into crazy tiny details, the show is setting up a battle between the hot and cold, dragons and White Walkers, ice and fire. Number 62. Cushenden is the name of the rocky beach in Northern Ireland where Melisandre gives birth to the ghost of the still-alive Stannis. Confusing? Check out episode 5, The Ghost of Harrenhal. Also, check out Cushenden during the daytime. Way nicer. Number 63. Speaking of Northern Ireland, the Queen of England visited the set at Titanic Studios there. Unfortunately, she could not be persuaded to actually sit on the Iron Throne. Number 64. Another departure from the books. In episode 4 of the season, Garden of Bones, Daenerys brings her dying, collapsing Khalasar to the gates of Qarth, and the 13 refuse to let her in. Why the change? No one is certain, but the effect of the scene is clear. Daenerys will not be bullied no matter how weak she appears. Number 65. The Battle of Blackwater takes up the entire penultimate episode of Season 2. The enormous land and sea battle for King's Landing was so massive it cost HBO an additional $2 million, bringing the total cost of the episode to $8 million, the largest single episode budget in TV history. Number 66. The scene required over 250 extras, and producers had custom ships and weapons and a new battlement, the side of a castle, built in the middle of nowhere to double for the shores of King's Landing. Number 67. Production of the episode required 7-day weeks for an entire month. Number 68. According to producers, King's Landing was being defended by about 7,000 men, which pales in comparison to Stannis' attacking force of 200 ships and 20,000 men. Going into the battle, Joffrey's rule could very easily be coming to a brutal end. Number 69. Complicating matters, the director of the episode had to drop out due to a personal emergency 1 week before filming. He was replaced by Neil Marshall, who did such an amazing job he was brought back to direct the mind-blowing battle episode Watchers on the Wall in Season 4, but more on that in the coming weeks. Number 70. One fun change from the books. In the show, the battle had to take place at night for budgetary reasons. It's way easier to do CGI at night because viewers can't see much beyond the focal point of the scene. Also, flaming arrows look amazing at night according to Benioff and Weiss. Number 71. Another massive change. In the books, Tyrion had an enormous chain constructed that would be raised to keep Stannis' ships stuck together when Tyrion's wildfire hits. Producers cut the chain, but kept the wildfire. Number 72. The wildfire Tyrion uses is a reference to an ancient chemical weapon known as Greek fire, which was a mixture of coal, tar, lime, and sulfur used in early gas chambers. Yeesh. Number 73. Why did Cersei ask for milk of the poppy? Well, according to the books and hinted at on the show, she would drug herself should the Lannisters lose the battle in order to avoid beheading by Ilyn Payne. Number 74. Remember from our last 107 facts on Game of Thrones Season 1 that George R.R. Martin writes one episode every season? For Season 2, it was Blackwater. Martin joked, "Benioff and Weiss gave me the hardest episode of the season. I think it was their subtle revenge for creating such a difficult-to-produce show." Number 75. The battle used more VFX shots than any other episode, creating hundreds of horses and over 200 ships in post-production, among dozens of other computer-generated creations like soldiers, green wildfire, and even elements of the castle and shoreline. Number 76. Surprisingly, Tyrion keeps his nose. In the books, his nose is chopped off during the Battle of Blackwater, but producers didn't want to digitally remove it in every frame for the rest of the life of the show. Number 77. One more small but important change. On the show, it's Sir Loras Tyrell, Renly's lover, who rides into the battle wearing Renly's armor to honor him. In the books, it was a minor character, Loras's brother, Garland. Number 78. Yes, the Hound is scared of fire. Harkening back to abuse he suffered at the hands of the Mountain, his monstrous older brother, the Hound flees instead of fighting near the wildfire. Number 79. Blackwater became one of the highest-rated episodes of the entire series with a record of 3.38 million viewers. Ratings haven't gone down since, and major media outlets refer to Blackwater as the episode that made Game of Thrones a bona fide hit. Number 80. Moving on to the lighter side of Game of Thrones, the second season only gets sexually explicit in 8 out of 10 episodes for a total of 7 minutes and 40 seconds, as opposed to season 1, which got a perfect score if you're into that kind of thing, clocking in at 10 out of 10 episodes for a total of 8 minutes and 10 seconds. Number 81. Similarly, the number of instances of nudity decreased from Season 1 to Season 2. There were 20 nude scenes in Season 1 and only 13 in Season 2. Show producers were given props for making the nudity more meaningful as well, like the scenes between lovers Renly and Loras discussing his claim to the throne. Number 82. Maisie Williams refused to cut her hair at first, even though Arya was supposed to be in hiding. She eventually did it out of spite for her wig in Season 1. Number 83. Arya's wasn't the only look that changed. Theon's look took on much more dirt and grime, as if covered in ocean salt and dirt. Number 84. Fans complained in forums about the changes producers made to Daenerys' visit to the House of the Undying. In the show, her visions were cryptic and mysterious, but in the books, they were quite literal representations of her past and future. Number 85. One more incredible update. To make Renly look more kingly, his entire wardrobe was overhauled, including a chest plate with over 800 strips of metal. Number 86. Speaking of wardrobe, even the extras have costumes made from scratch. They have a fitting the day before they start, and then a 12 to 16 hour day the day they shoot. Number 87. We're almost done with Season 2 and we've barely talked stunts. Paul Herbert is the stunt coordinator. You won't recognize him, but you've seen his work, from doing stunts in Saving Private Ryan to coordinating all the stunts for In Bruges, Les Mis, and a multitude of TV shows. Number 88. C.C. Smith is the Swordmaster, and that is how you pronounce his name, Smith. The job is, well, mastering the sword fights. From giant brawls to one-on-one battles, Smith organizes it all. Number 89. Season 2 was also notable for the new incest storyline introduced. 20 minutes into the season, we meet Craster, husband and father to a couple dozen women beyond the wall at Craster's Keep. Number 90. Speaking of gross stuff, it was during Season 2 that the media started criticizing the sexual violence on Game of Thrones, pointing to, among other things, Joffrey's brutality toward Ros and the second prostitute sent by Tyrion. What do you think? Does the show go too far, or is it just doing justice to the books, which are brutal in and of themselves? Number 91. Speaking of brutality, one big change is who first gives Theon the idea to attack Winterfell and destroy all that was dear to him. In the book, it was Ramsay Bolton, and on the show, it's his first mate as he leaves Pike. Number 92. Google Aaron Greyjoy if you're not familiar. In a departure from the books, Theon's uncle was held back from Season 2, and his reemergence will be big. Number 93. In every season, at least one king dies. Season 1 was Robert, Season 2 it's Renly, Season 3, you'll have to check back next week. Number 94. Now for some quick hits. Valar Morghulis, the title of the 10th episode in Season 2, translates as "All men must die." The phrase is also a line in the episode, spoken by Jaqen in conversation with Arya. Number 95. Ian Glenn, who played Jorah Mormont, became so good at speaking Dothraki, he was able to ad-lib the entire final scene of the season finale. Number 96. Since dire wolves are known to be much larger than normal wolves, real wolves were digitally composited into scenes for Season 2. To save money, there are only a handful of scenes that include them in Season 2, but man, do they make it count. Number 97. Questions have arose about how Game of Thrones creators are allowed to do awful stuff to children on the show. Well, parents are required on set by law, which is great, but pretty damn awkward for Sophie Turner's parents, according to Dan Weiss. Number 98. According to Benioff, the only time Turner was genuinely afraid was when she had to sing in Season 2. Really? All those explicit scenes and humming a little tune is the one that got you? Number 99. Season 2 marked the final season in which Clarke went full-on nude on Game of Thrones. The actress took a stance and refused to strip naked after the first 2 seasons of the show, telling producers, "I want to be known for my acting, not for my breasts." Number 100. Speaking of nudity, while Season 1 was given an R16 rating upon its DVD release in New Zealand, Season 2 was strictly branded with an R18 rating, resulting in all those 16 and 17-year-old fans doing a little sneaking around. Number 101. Some fans with too much time on their hands started a petition following Season 2 to fire the actor playing Rickon Stark. Luckily, the petition only received 10 signatures. Number 102. The show is known for its multitude of deaths, and Season 2 was no exception. There is a bookstore in England called Waterstones that has a dorking section, and they've labeled every death. Number 103. Season 2 saw continued growth for the show. 4 million viewers tuned in to watch the Series 2 finale, a new high for the show. Not only that, Thrones celebrated a 1 million viewer increase from its Season 1 finale. Number 104, Game of Thrones Season 2 Blu-ray is still in the top 400 sellers on Amazon 4 years after its release. Number 105, the Blu-ray editions of Season 2 contain dragon eggs, Game of Thrones' version of Easter eggs, including a special video on the War of the Five Kings. Number 106, Season 2 is also beloved critically. It currently holds a 97% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 14% higher than Season 1. Number 107, at the 64th Primetime Emmy Awards, the show's second season was nominated for 12 awards, and Dinklage was once again the only cast member to get a nomination. However, the show tied Homeland for most Emmy wins of the night.
If you were watching Game of Thrones Season 3 as it came out, you probably remember what a revelation this season was. Nobody had ever been safe in Westeros, with major character deaths around every corner. But remember the Red Wedding? Oh boy. With that in mind, here's 107 Game of Thrones Season 3 facts you should know.
Last week we covered the sophomore season of the most entertaining bloodbath on television, Game of Thrones Season 2. We heard all about how the cast moved forward after Sean Bean's surprise exit and said goodbye to some of the more pivotal characters. It makes you wonder how they plan to top all that drama with Season 3. Think you know the whole story? Think again. I'm Jake with Cinematica, and we're here to give you the inside scoop on how the cast and crew move forward in a bigger and bolder way with Game of Thrones Season 3. From mysterious new characters to soul-crushing deaths, audiences were in for more than a few shocking twists and turns. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just wondering what the fuss is all about, we've got something for everyone as we count down the 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 3. Let's do this. Number 1. Game of Thrones Season 3 premiered in 2013 and ran for another set of 10 episodes between March and June. Number 2. The directors this season were Daniel Minahan, Alex Graves, Alex Sakharov, Michelle MacLaren, and David Nutter. Graves and MacLaren were new to the show. MacLaren, in particular, had directed huge shows like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead, while Graves had directed a lot of West Wing episodes. Number 3. Due to his busy schedule, the Dark World director Alan Taylor couldn't return in Season 3 to direct any episodes. He was originally replaced by Minahan, who directed 3 episodes in Season 1, A Gold Crown, You Win or You Die, and The Pointy End. Some of his biggest credits include True Blood, 6 Feet Under, and Deadwood. Number 4. Most episodes this season were a few minutes longer than normal. While previous seasons floated around the 52-minute mark, Season 3 saw more 56 to 57-minute episodes. And if we do some quick math there, you'll see that added up to an additional episode worth of content. Number 5. Season 3 saw characters speaking Valyrian more than Dothraki. Language creator David Peterson relates High Valyrian to Latin and developed dialects of Low Valyrian to the Romance languages, such as Spanish, French, Catalan, and Portuguese. Number 6. Much like Spanish and French, High Valyrian uses grammatical genders. But instead of just man and woman, High Valyrian uses 4 genders: lunar, solar, terrestrial, and aquatic. Nouns for humans are normally lunar, body parts and occupations are solar, food and plants are commonly terrestrial, and liquids are aquatic. Number 7. Our chief Valyrian speaker is, of course, Daenerys. Her mother tongue is High Valyrian, but she also mixes in Low Valyrian easily. For example, when she tells Astroporian slave driver Krasnus, quote, "A dragon is not a slave," she uses Low Valyrian word for slave, letting him know that she has understood all his insults. Number 8. Peterson has pulled in some real-world inspiration for his work on Valyrian. Kelly is the word for cat in High Valyrian. That's spelled K-E-L-I, which is the name of Peterson's own cat. And the word son is Tracy, named after his 3,000th Twitter follower, @Tracy, 2 E's. Number 9. Daenerys' ship is actually recycled from the Battle of Blackwater. Apparently, prop boats are pretty expensive, so they really only have one, and it just plays the role of many ships. During the Battle of Blackwater, for instance, it was Fury and Black Betha. It's a very talented, versatile boat when you think about it. Number 10. As the White Walkers loom ever closer, we get a better look at their weapons, ice swords. To achieve their chilling look, the weapons team carved oven-baked clear resin into the shape of swords. Number 11. In order for actors playing archers to work more safely with flaming arrows, weapons master Tommy Dune made some slight adjustments to his arrow's original design. Normal arrows tend to be about 32 inches in length, but for the sake of this shoot, a flaming arrow was between 6 to 8 inches longer. Number 12. The flaming arrows also had a small bit of foam on the end, doused in chemical, that produced a blue flame. Blue fire is used because it's much easier for special effects team to work with. Number 13. Depending on what type of scene they're shooting, actors use different weapons. For glamour shots, they wielded steel blades with brass and wood detailing. But to avoid injury, they're given aircraft aluminum or even rubber swords to clang together for fight scenes, or when live animals were involved. Number 14. The costumes for Season 3 use an astounding 31,653 square feet of leather and fur. Number 15. Just as much work and care goes into each suit of armor. Nikolaj Coster-Waldau gets out of his armor every chance possible because he finds it too heavy. Actor Ian Beattie, who plays Meryn Trant, even joked that Coster-Waldau is a bit of a wuss about it. Number 16. Sophie Turner says the writers like to prank the actors by including fake death scenes in their scripts. They only reveal to the actors that it was a joke weeks later. Number 17. For Season 3, the cast recorded about 6 scenes per day on average. Number 18. This season, while Jon Snow goes beyond the wall, the Game of Thrones cast and crew were actually filming in Europe, at a glacier that I can't pronounce. Number 19. The set for Yunkai was a famous mud brick fortress that has been a great filming location for Hollywood movies, including Gladiator and Lawrence of Arabia. Number 20. Filming required 3 charter planes because the crew topped out at over 700 people. Number 21. Season 3 had 257 cast names recorded, and though most were in small roles, that's still massive compared to most TV shows. Number 22. Many of the extras who are part of the Night's Watch also play the Unsullied. Number 23. Around the release of this season, Lena Headey was apparently broke, with only a few dollars left to her name. You'd wonder how anybody starring in one of the TV's biggest shows could possibly be in that situation. Either way, it's hard to imagine Queen Cersei is in that position now. Number 24. Charles Dance, who plays the iron-fisted Tywin Lannister, also likes to play the ukulele in his spare time. Number 25. Emilia Clarke says that in Season 3, Dany is much more accustomed to violence. Apparently, that means she's cool with setting people on fire. Number 26. Kit Harington broke his ankle after he locked himself out of his apartment and then tried to crawl through a window. He was in a cast while filming parts of Season 3. Number 27. Due to the popularity of the catchphrase, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," fans started yelling it at Harington whenever they'd see him in real life, in addition to making jokes about him being a bastard. Harington often says that when he's out with his friends who don't watch the show, it's very jarring to hear people screaming at them. Number 28. The actor who plays Ramsay Snow was almost a very different Snow. He actually auditioned for Jon Snow and nearly got the part. Number 29. Apparently, Rian can sing, making him yet another musical cast member of the show. He's joked in interviews about starting a Game of Thrones band, which we know would make some great music. Number 30. Audiences first met Thomas Brodie Sangster as a small boy that barely reached Liam Neeson's hip in the movie Love Actually. He not only plays Jojen Reed in Game of Thrones, but also Newt in the Maze Runner series. Number 31. Ellie Kendrick plays Mira Reed this season. Kendrick is new to the fantasy world, having appeared in a lot of historically grounded or real-world roles. Needless to say, before this role, she had never used a bow and arrow or skinned a rabbit. Number 32. So this is weird. Kendrick played Anne Frank in the Diary of Anne Frank miniseries, and Brodie Sangster played a young Hitler in Hitler: The Rise of Evil miniseries. Number 33. Dario Naharis is played by Ed Skrein. Similar to Dario's origins as a young pit fighter, Skrein was actually in a gang when he was younger, until he got stabbed, at which point he decided to stop and pick up acting. Actually, that I don't know is true, but at some point he did stop and then he did pick up acting. Number 34. Some heartbreaking news for the fans of Dario's luscious locks. It's a wig. Most of the time, he's bald as a Q-tip. Number 35. Skrein only plays Dario in this season because he was offered the lead in the Transporter series. You may have also seen him in Deadpool. Number 36. Kiri Ingram, who plays the grayscaled Shireen, has a chronic illness herself, osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. She's broken 30 bones in her lifetime as a result of the condition. However, she said that living with it has actually helped her relate to Shireen. Number 37. During Season 2, the show writers were unsure if they'd be able to adapt Shireen into the show. They used carefully worded dialogue to indicate that Selyse had given Stannis no sons, so that, maybe he gave her a daughter? Really tricky, guys. I see what you did there. Number 38. Shireen's fictional disease, grayscale, is based on the non-fictional disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressive. Number 39. In books, Stannis is largely described from the other characters' point of view, so when they adapted him into the show, he was without an emotional story arc, taking cues from the book that concentrated his portrayal of Selyse with Melisandre. which was a result of his desperation following Blackwater. Number 40. Orell is a wildling who introduces the audience to Warg's power to jump into the minds of animals. Orell is played by Mackenzie Crook, aka Ragetti from Pirates of the Caribbean. Number 41. Walder Frey is a filthy slimeball and everybody knows it. His overall grossness is largely thanks to the actor David Bradley, who you might also recognize as the slimeball Argus Filch from Harry Potter. Number 42, Diana Rigg, who plays Marguerite's grandmother, Elena, was in The Avengers. No, not that Avengers, the 1965 TV series. Number 43, recognize Mance Rayder? Maybe not without the long silver facial hair. Actor Kieran Hines played Aberforth Dumbledore in the final Harry Potter movie, making him another of the many Potter crossovers in the show. Number 44, Hines was actually irritated by the show at first, finding a lot of the violence and sex to be gratuitous. As the show progressed, however, he says he got more into the storytelling and realized how fantastic it was. Number 45, the role of Mance Rayder almost went to Dominic West, who was on The Wire and currently stars in Showtime's The Affair. Number 46, while Hines isn't alone in criticizing the volume of sex on the show, Natalie Dormer has also voiced her opinion, citing that the solution should not be less sex, but more male nudity. Number 47, despite sharing a last name, Richard Dormer and Natalie Dormer are not related. Number 48, Rose Leslie actually grew up in a castle in Aberdeenshire. Awfully cushy upbringing for a wildling. Number 49, this season covers roughly the first half of the third book. Episode 1, Valar Dohaeris, corresponds with the prologue of Book 3, and the last episode, Misa, ends with Davos 4. Number 50, the title of the first episode is a High Valyrian phrase meant to be a response to the finale of the previous season. The season 2 finale, when translated, meant all men must die, whereas the season 3 premiere, when translated, means all men must serve. Number 51, the phrase isn't actually spoken in the episode, and wouldn't be spoken until later in the season, specifically the episode The Climb. Number 52. In episode 1, Dany is attacked by a manticore, which seems like an insect. In other mythologies outside the Game of Thrones universe, manticores generally look like lions, not bugs, though they are venomous. Number 53. Arya Stark had some scenes in the first episode, but according to some close to the show, it started to feel pretty cramped in there, so they pushed those scenes to the next episode. Number 54. In one line of dialogue, Cersei tells Tyrion that she heard he had lost his nose. In the books, he actually did. When Sir Mandon Moore attacks him, the front of his nose is severed. However, the TV show decided to go in a different direction because it would provide too much work in post-production. Number 55. George R.R. Martin says that Sir Barristan was the Kingsguard for 40 years before quitting and showing up again in season 3. Number 56. The series premiere was nominated for 3 Primetime Emmys in 2013. 1 for Outstanding Prosthetic Makeup for a Single Camera Series, 1 for Outstanding Visual Effects, and 1 for Outstanding Art Director for a Single Camera Series. It actually won Outstanding Visual Effects. Number 57. In the books, Ostapor slaves are displayed in a plaza of punishment, not a walk. This was changed in the show, however, when the production designers found that their location in Morocco had a walkway lined with gunpowder cannons. The cannons don't exist in the Game of Thrones world, but it also couldn't be moved. To resolve the situation, they covered the cannons with the punished people, thereby creating the walk. Number 58. Martin also describes the Brotherhood without banners as a kind of Robin Hood group. Number 59. Tyrion mentions a contortionist who can perform a sex position called the Myronese Knot. This is a nod to book fans who may not know that the Myronese Knot is a series of plot-related issues that Martin got into while writing the 5th novel, which caused the novel to be delayed while he, quote, untied it. Number 60. Robb's beheading of Rickard Karkstark was intended to parallel Theon's beheading of Roderick Castle. When Theon first attempted a beheading, he did so sloppily and took several strokes to finish the job, showing that he wasn't properly following the ways of Ned. Robb, by contrast, was able to kill Rickard in one blow, because he did take up his father's legacy. However, the same music is used in both scenes to illustrate that both are making a grave mistake. Number 61. For the decapitation scene, the production really wanted it to be raining, which normally isn't a lot to ask for in Northern Ireland. However, in this case, there was a bizarre lack of rain at the time, so they had to use rain machines. Number 62. The original title of The Bear and the Maiden Fair was Autumn Storms, as announced on Martin's blog. However, later, he announced that the title had changed to Chains. Finally, the episode got its current title after the scenes with the bear and the maiden were moved into the episode. Number 63. How did they make Jaime get getting his hand severed even more shocking? Simple. Followed up by slamming modern rock song behind it. Co-creator D.B. Weiss says that they wanted to leave the viewers uneasy, and they didn't think they could do that with the traditional Game of Thrones score. So, by using a contemporary song, they caught their audience completely off guard, hoping to capture the shocking moment they felt while reading the book. Number 64. The song was performed by New York-based band The Hold Steady. Guitarist Tad Kubler is friends with Peter Dinklage. The two used to play pool together in Brooklyn. Both the show creators and Martin liked the Hold Steady song so much that they subsequently offered Kubler a cameo appearance on the show. Number 65. The cave in which Jon Snow and Ygritte get, was used in the show before. The set was in Belfast, Ireland, in the same cave that the Brotherhood Without Banners resided in. Number 66. Harrington and Leslie were actually dating at the time of the cave sex scene. Number 67. For the nude scene in the cave, Harrington used a body double. His butt wasn't actually his. It was only a stunt butt. Number 68. Here's a sentence I bet you thought you'd never hear. My second proudest moment as a writer on this show was when I walked on set and saw those dead baby props. That's story editor Brian Cogman, who, in a half-sleeping stupor, invented the idea of Stannis' wife, Selyse, preserving her stillborn children. He thought it would be too crazy to roll with, but lo and behold, dead baby props. Number 69. Cogman refers to the climax of Kissed by Fire as a Lannister family Christmas. He says that starting the episode with a bang and having a climax with a relatively more mellow dinner scene was on purpose. Number 70. Kissed by Fire won a 2013 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Non-Prosthetic Makeup for a single-camera series. Number 71. When the wildlings climbed the wall in the episode The Climb, they used the wrong wall climbing technique, and most experts claim that the tactic probably wouldn't work. Number 72. In order to film that scene, the crew built a 50-foot wall indoors. Number 73. While climbing, the actors had safety wires and were lifted up in a harness. But during filming, they were really climbing. Leslie says it was fun, but very hard on the arms. Some of the actors claim that the fear that they show in the climbing scene was real, because it was really scary being up that high. Number 74. Harrington describes Mance Rayder as the smartest person in the wildling camp, and the directors say that it's Jon Snow and Mance Rayder's intelligence that connects them and helps them see eye to eye. Number 75. The episode The Climb had the most viewers that season, with 5.5 million people tuning in. Number 76. In the episode The Bear and the Maiden Fair, where Jaime returns to Harrenhal to rescue Brienne, Locke tells Jaime to go buy yourself a golden hand and fuck yourself with it. Ironically enough, a shiny golden hand from his sister Cersei the following season. Number 77. They had a real bear on set for the fight with Brienne, but they also had a guy in a bear costume to make filming easier when the bear wasn't actually on set. Number 78. Fans are introduced to the marching song The Bear and the Maiden Fair as Roose Bolton and his bannermen are trotting to Harrenhal. The bard who starts the song is played by none other than Gary Lightbody, the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Snow Patrol. Number 79. It's no surprise that some Game of Thrones fans like to film themselves and others reacting to new episodes, especially The Red Wedding. During an interview on Conan, Martin was shown a short compilation of fans reacting to his show. It was mostly screaming and crying and more screaming, followed by Martin's giggling. Number 80. Did you notice something suspicious about the musicians at the Red Wedding ceremony? Exactly. It's Coldplay drummer Will Champion. Number 81. Game of Thrones has been said to draw inspiration from the War of the Roses, all the way down to the specific events. For example, the Red Wedding is based on the Black Dinner. A Scottish lord and his clansmen were invited to a dinner at the king's house by an opposing faction. Everything was fine until the Scottish clan was served a black bull's head, which is a Scottish symbol for death. Then, they were all put to death in the courtyard. Number 82. Oh, there's also a second mass murder the Red Wedding drew inspiration from. It was the Glencoe Massacre. As the MacDonald clan slept under the Campbell clan's roof, the Campbells awoke and slaughtered every MacDonald they can find. And just when you think Game of Thrones is the most brutal thing out there, all you have to do is look at history and realize life can be way, way worse. Number 83. The Red Wedding not only left fans in tears, but also cast members too. Michelle Fearley reportedly cried while watching the Red Wedding scene for the Season 3 DVD commentary. It was the first time she had seen the scene outside of her Caitlyn gear. Richard Madden, too, admits to being a crazy boy on the plane crying as he flew away from Ireland after filming the scene. Number 84. To celebrate the successful launch of the Season 3 DVD and Blu-ray, cast, crew, and journalists enjoyed a Game of Thrones evening complete with custom Red Wedding-themed cake, stacked high with daggers, arrows, and blood. The confectionery construction was made by a Brighton chocolatier, Chalky Walkie Doodah. Number 85. In case you wanted to break bread the Westerosi way, Chef Chelsea Monroe Castle has crafted a recipe. Her blog, In at the Crossroads, has also been turned into HBO's official cookbook companion for the show. Number 86. Martin says he knew he had to kill Robb Stark from almost the very beginning. He explains that Robb's rising to avenge his father and taking up the hero's mantle is what the readers would expect. So, quote, immediately killing Robb became the next thing I had to do. Number 87. Martin initially skipped the Red Wedding chapter when first writing A Storm of Swords. The entire book was finished before he went back to write that chapter, and it was the hardest thing he's ever had to write. It was like murdering 2 of your children, he said. Number 88. Apparently, people love violence, because after the Red Wedding, Season 3 saw an overall 20% boost in viewership. This is most likely due to the Twitter hurricane after the rains of Castamere cleared. Number 89. Martin wanted to cameo in the episode as one of the casualties, but wasn't able to make it to the shooting location due to scheduling conflicts. If he had, it would mean that not even George R.R. Martin is safe from being killed by George R.R. Martin. Number 90. The directors purposefully made the Red Wedding seem like it was going well before everybody died. And they purposely made it last an uncomfortably long amount of time. Number 91. The Red Wedding was one of the main reasons that Weiss and Benioff wanted to make the Game of Thrones in the first place. Number 92. I bet you think you had a hard time watching Ramsay's sausage scene. Rian had to spend the whole morning eating sausage over and over again for hours and hours. Number 93. As usual, there were quite a few differences between the show and the books. Here are just a few of them. In the show, Robb falls in love and marries Talisa Magger, but in the books he marries Jane Westerling, the daughter of Lannister Bannerman. In the book, Jane does not get pregnant because her mother was secretly poisoning her under orders from Tywin. Number 94. In the books, Renly Baratheon and Loras Tyrell's relationship is largely heard, but never seen. Not only is it showcased more in the show, but other people seem to be more aware of it too, with several characters all making not-so-subtle comments about it this season. Number 95. In the books, Martin points out that there are lots of little hints that the Freys are conspiring with the Boltons and the Lannisters to kill the Starks. Roose Bolton's page is a Frey. The Lannister boys' prisoners are related to the Freys, and Rosalind Frey can't stop crying during the ceremony. Also, he mentions that the musicians are awful, showing that they aren't actually musicians. Number 96. On the show, as Roose prepares to send Robb to the afterlife to join his wife and unborn son, he says the now famous one-liner,
The Lannisters send their regards.
In the books, however, the line goes, Jaime Lannister sends his regards. Number 97. Major Season 3 player and bastard son of King Robert Baratheon, Gendry, is actually playing out 2 storylines in one. In the books, Gendry is one of 2 surviving heirs, the other being Edric Storm. Edric's storyline, which involves being captured by Stannis, leeched, and nearly sacrificed, is merged with Gendry's for the show. Number 98. Shay's heart is torn to pieces after Tyrion, the love of her life, is married to Sansa, her friend and confidant. In the books, however, Shay doesn't consider the little girl a rival for Tyrion's heart, and gets to show off her merciful side more than she does in the show. Number 99. The Starks first get wind of Theon's rumored demise in the books when a piece of skin shows up at the Red Wedding. Theon's torture takes place mainly off-page, and even his castration, which is very explicit in the show, is only implied in the books. Number 100. Martin is very satisfied with the way the logistics and politics is shown in the series. One of his biggest pet peeves with fantasy or sci-fi novels is a war boiling down to just 2 armies fighting. Number 101. Martin and his wife Paris are both big Grateful Dead fans. In honor of the band co-founder and guitarist Bob Weir, he named the trees worshipped in the Old Faith Weirwood trees. Number 102. After this season, the show creators also tried to reduce the number of regular exposition and planning scenes filmed while walking in the garden, after South Park made fun of them in a parody episode. Number 103. There are several burlesque parodies of Game of Thrones, including Dames of Thrones and Live, Dirty, and Dangerous. One show in particular, Burlesque is Coming, a tribute to the works of George R.R. Martin, got high praise from the big man himself. Number 104. Piracy continues to be a problem for Game of Thrones, but HBO doesn't really mind. Season 3's finale was downloaded over 5.9 million times, and the first episode of Season 3 was pirated so much that it was the most shared file in BitTorrent's history. CEO Richard Plepler sees it as a great marketing vehicle for new viewers. Number 105. Season 3 routinely had between 4 and 6 million viewers per episode, a steady rise from Season 2, and part of the series' consistent growth since Season 1. Number 106. There are a total of 86 deaths in Season 3. That's a decline from Season 2, though somehow that hasn't helped the crying. Number 107. Out of the first 3 seasons, Season 3 is the least sexually explicit. In fact, there are only 31 total instances of nudity.
Next up, we're gonna delve deep into Season 4. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Get ready, it's 107 Game of Thrones Season 4 facts that you should know.
A few weeks ago, we covered the 3rd season of the most entertaining bloodbath on television, Game of Thrones. We heard all about how the cast and crew pulled off the epic Red Wedding and said goodbye to even more pivotal characters. How could Season 4 ever top it? Well, it did and then some. Think you know the whole story? Think again. I'm Jillian Leff with Cinematica, and we're here to give you the inside scoop on how Game of Thrones got even crazier in Season 4. From Lannister family drama to, you guessed it, game-changing deaths, our heads were left spinning. Whether you're a diehard fan or just wondering what all the fuss is about, we've got something for everyone as we count down the 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 4. Let's get started. Number 1. Game of Thrones Season 4 aired from April 6 to June 15, 2014. The premiere was seen by 6.6 million viewers at its 9 p.m. time slot, making it the most watched episode of George R.R. Martin's epic up to that point. Number 2. So far, Game of Thrones has been tackling about a book per season. However, the 3rd novel, A Storm of Swords, was so massive that they decided to split it in half with Season 3, covering just the first part. As a result, Season 4 really corresponds with Book 3, Part 2, adapting the original climaxes of that novel. Number 3. When Martin first set out writing the massive fantasy series, it was only meant to be a trilogy. He decided to make it even longer by splitting the first novel, A Game of Thrones, into 3 books, encompassing A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords. That's why, wrapping up Book 3, Season 4 sees the resolution of a lot of storylines kicked off in Season 1. Number 4. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have said that, compared to the preceding seasons, this one contains the most action per capita. We're interpreting that as everything you hold dear is even less sacred than it already wasn't. Number 5. Prior to the release of the season, HBO greenlit an album of Game of Thrones-inspired hip-hop songs titled Catch the Throne, which was posted to SoundCloud for free. This mixtape isn't just fire, it's also ice. Boom. Drops mic. Number 6. Telltale's Game of Thrones game runs concurrently with the season, picking up after that part of Season 3 and running all the way to Season 5. Keeping spoilers to a minimum here, it follows House Forrester through a lot of familiar locations and events and encounters with familiar faces. Number 7. Executive story editor Brian Cogman was promoted to co-producer this season. He had previously gained his executive title for Season 3. He's climbing that ladder awfully quickly. Looks like someone is playing the Game of Thrones. Number 8. If you look at Cogman's name in the opening credits, the symbol next to it is actually that of a vomiting maester. This is a jab from Benioff and Weiss, alluding to the time Cogman had a bit too much to drink at a rap party and, well, you know where this is going. Number 9. Kit Harington notes that this is a big season for Jon Snow, with one of his most marked developments being his increase in dialogue. Jon Snow is typically the strong silent type, so Harington recalls how weird it was for him to actually give a speech. Number 10. Someone actually put together a list of lines per character, and at this season's finale, Jon Snow is up to 489, trailing behind Daenerys and Cersei in 3rd and 2nd place respectively. First place is, of course, Tyrion, who trounces the competition with 1,002 lines, more than twice Jon Snow's. Number 11. Game of Thrones can often be a humorless ordeal, but nothing was less funny than HBO's April Fool's Day prank on fans. They said Peter Dinklage would not be appearing in Season 4 and that they would be taking on a new direction with Tyrion by recasting him with Warwick Davis. First of all, don't toy with us like that. Second of all, Warwick is pretty great too. If you want to make jokes, say you're recasting Tyrion as Jaden Smith. Number 12. The co-creators also played a prank on Gwendolyn Christie. They showed her a New York Times article that accused her of being snobby for not signing a fan's autograph. The article, the fan, and the non-autograph were all fake. Hilarious, you evil bastards. Just hilarious. Number 13. An actual recast, though, Michiel Huisman usurps Ed Skrein as Dario this season. Hailing from Dutch television, the actor has also had roles in shows like Nashville and Orphan Black, and appeared in World War Z. And have you seen that hair? Number 14. Add Huisman to the increasingly long list of musically inclined actors on the show. He was the singer and guitarist in a Dutch band called Fontaine in the early 2000s, before branching off and becoming a solo artist. Number 15. Tommen Baratheon was also recast, now being played by Dean Charles Chapman rather than Callum Wari. Chapman actually appeared on the show already as Martin Lannister, Tommen's cousin, just last season. Identical cousins? We're pretty sure there was a Full House plotline that went something like this, though with less incest. Number 16. The Mountain was recasted again. As of this season, he's being played by Icelandic strongman Hafthor Theodore Julius Bjornsson, and I really hope I said that right because I don't want him coming after me. Number 17. Remember how we told you Nikolai Coster-Waldau absolutely hates wearing his armor? Well, this season his armor is made of real brass, which actually made it even more uncomfortable than the previous seasons when it was fake. Number 18. Maybe that explains why Gwendolyn Christie's nickname for Coster-Waldau is Princess. Number 19. What's new and exciting with Bran this season? Well, actor Isaac Hempstead Wright is now wearing a wig for the part, whereas it used to be his real hair. Number 20. New to the cast this season is Pedro Pascal as Oberyn Martell. Upon the announcement of his casting, the producer of the show that he had previously appeared on contacted Martin just to tell him how good the actor is, so they knew they were in good hands. Can't say the same about Pascal, though. Number 21. Michelle Clapton, the show's costume designer, based Oberon's clothing on none other than the legendary guitarist Jimi Hendrix. Oberon was always a rock star in our book. Number 22. Recognize Tycho Nestoris from the Iron Bank? That's Mark Gatiss, or Mycroft Holmes from Sherlock. He also co-created the show and writes for both it and Doctor Who. Number 23. Hannah Murray, who plays Gilly, was bumped up to main cast this season. Benioff and Weiss told Murray to read about the Austrian Joseph Fritzl to prepare for the part. Fritzl was sentenced to life imprisonment after holding his daughter captive for 24 years and sexually abusing her. Yikes, not the most desirable thing to be told to base your role after. Number 24. Who's the biggest diva on set? Apparently it's Sir Pounce, Tommen's cat. Cogman said that Sir Pounce is important to differentiate Tommen from Joffrey, showing the former in a much friendlier light. Yet filming with a cat wasn't quite as nice for the people involved. Number 25. This season, German special effects company Pixomondo based the movements of Daenerys dragons off of chickens, which I guess is fair if it's the closest thing we have to dragons in real life. Number 26. The production team didn't return to Morocco, instead shooting Daenerys' scenes in Croatia. This knocked the span of their foreign countries down to just 3, including Northern Ireland and Iceland. Number 27. As with the season 3 episode Walk of Punishment, Two Swords was directed by both Benioff and Weiss, yet only one could be credited. Since Benioff got the credit last time, Weiss got the credit this time. Number 28. Game of Thrones tends to be barbaric all on its own, but one scene in Two Swords was actually inspired by the 1982 movie Conan the Barbarian, the forging scene. It was filmed in an actual working forge in 700-degree heat. Number 29. Actually, the blacksmith was played by longtime Game of Thrones weapon master Tommy Dunn. Number 30. Who else cameos in this episode? The people behind it all. Benioff's parents. Stephen and Barbara Benioff played the older merchant couple that passed the characters outside the Dornish embassy. Number 31. The armor that Brienne receives from Jaime this season was actually so heavy that Christie started taking Advil to ease the pain of wearing it. Number 32. Joffrey mentions Sir Duncan the Tall while reading the White Book of the Kingsguard. Sir Duncan was also mentioned back in season 1's episode Lord Snow and is a main character of Martin's other series, Dunk and Egg. Number 33. Jaime waving his golden hand at Qyburn was actually an improvised scene by Coster-Waldau. Like Jaime, he's right-handed in real life, so he understands Jaime's pain. Number 34. Don't you hate it when your dragons bring you a goat carcass and it bounces all over the place? That's what happened with Dany's dragons. The carcass prop was made of rubber, so when it was dropped from 15 feet, it kept bouncing off its mark. Number 35. After being shot with multiple arrows last season, Jon Snow was supposed to look weak and in recovery this season. However, Harrington just finished working on the movie Pompeii, meaning he was the exact opposite of weak and in recovery. Because of this, they couldn't ever show Jon Snow shirtless, which means we're sure a lot of people are really broken up about. Number 36. Arya's fight with Polliver was originally slated to happen later on this season, but the show's creators decided to bump it up to the beginning to give her arc a stronger opening. Number 37. The scene where the Hound chugs Polliver's flagon of ale took about 12 takes, and each time actor Rory McCann had to drink the full contents of the flagon, which was water with food coloring. Even so, that can be a lot in succession, and after the final take, McCann stepped outside and threw up everywhere. Number 38. Remember when Olenna tosses the jeweled necklace over a cliffside towards the sea? Turns out the production team didn't actually own the necklace, so someone had to go get that. Number 39. Episode 2, The Lion and the Rose, was written by franchise creator Martin himself, his typical episode contribution for each season. Number 40. Martin had wanted to set the entire episode at the wedding, the same way season 2 set an episode entirely at the Battle of Blackwater. However, Benioff and Weiss resisted because they couldn't pause the other plot lines for a full episode. Number 41. The Purple Wedding, as this episode has come to be called, was actually never called that in the books the way the Red Wedding was. Instead, it's just a fan nickname named after Joffrey Joffrey's wine and Sansa's jewels, which incidentally are blue in the show. However, the term has become so popular that now even the show creators and Martin use it. Number 42. Joffrey names his sword Widow's Wail, but some of the alternate names are references to other fantasy works. Stormbringer, for instance, is a reference to the sword used by Elric in Michael Moorcook's novels. Terminus is also a sword from the Book of the New Sun series by Gene Wolfe. Number 43. The visions that Bran receives after touching the weirwood tree is inspired by the style of the Devil's Tower visions in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Number 44. The parody performance of all of Joffrey's victories used little people to make Tyrion uncomfortable. However, expectably, it made Peter Dinklage uncomfortable as an actor too. In a good way, he says. The kind of discomfort an actor can use to get into character. Number 45. In the books, the performers are riding on pigs, but the production crew couldn't find pigs big enough for anybody to ride on without it qualifying as animal cruelty, so they opted for fake horses instead. Number 46. The cast hadn't seen the little people in wardrobe until they were actually filming. Clapton's costumes were so impressive that the crew wanted to hold off on showing them so they could get real reactions from the camera. Number 47. The musicians playing at the wedding are a real band. It's Icelandic post-pop group Sigur Rós making a cameo. Number 48. The band was actually pelted by prop coins made of rubber, and one of them hit the band members right in the forehead. It actually injured him. Number 49. Jack Gleeson nabbed one of the coins, which had Joffrey's profile on them, as a souvenir. I mean, come on, wouldn't you want a coin with your face on it? Number 50. For each time Gleeson sliced into Joffrey's wedding pie, a different set of doves were used. Number 51. Demanding his wine, Joffrey screams at Tyrion that this pie is dry. This line broke Lena Headey and Dinklage into hysterical pieces since it sounded like a double entendre. Apparently, there were actual delays in production because the two of them could not keep their shit together. Number 52. At long last, Joffrey dies this season, as everyone wished. Literally, everyone. Even Samuel L. Jackson confronted Benioff and Weiss at Comic-Con and went on for 5 minutes about how terrible Joffrey is and how he should be killed. We hope his rant involved striking down upon him with great vengeance and furious anger. Number 53. Unfortunately, this was the least viewed episode of the season with only 6.31 million viewers. Number 54. Martin based Joffrey's death off of the real-life death of King Stephen's son, Eustace. Like Joffrey, Eustace choked to death, yet it was unclear whether he really choked or if he had been poisoned by one of his father's enemies. He says that this ambiguity is what Joffrey's assassinators were hoping for, not realizing that Cersei would jump so quickly to murder. Number 55. Gleeson played Joffrey's corpse in Breaker of Chains, and by play, I mean he pretty much got to lie there the whole day and get paid for it. However, maybe the fact that his parents are having sex right next to him sort of makes it less worth it. Number 56. Sometimes you gotta get creative with your prop work. For instance, when Jojen was having a seizure in Caster's Keep, it's scrambled egg whites coming out of his mouth. Number 57. Game of Thrones references a lot of medieval fantasy, but there's one you may have not expected. When the Myronese champion is yelling at Daenerys, his low Valyrian actually translate to French knights' insults from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Your mother is a hamster and your father smells of elderberries. Number 58. Pascala said that one of the most memorable moments of filming was how one of the actresses playing a prostitute during the orgy scene never put on her robe in between takes. Apparently, it was a long day of filming and the actress would even stay nude during her breaks. Number 59. This episode contains one of the most controversial scenes during the show's run, that being of Jaime's alleged rape of Cersei. In the books, the sexual encounter is very obviously consensual. In the show, it's more ambiguous whether it is or it isn't. However, the actors and directors both seem to stand by the fact that it was written and played as consensual. Number 60. Jaime and Bronn's sparring match actually takes place on a concrete patio belonging to a rich man in Croatia. The art department had to make it look more setting appropriate, which meant painting each individual stone tile and adding fake coastal rocks. Number 61. The scene at the end of Oathkeeper of Craster's baby being turned into a White Walker hasn't appeared in any of the novels so far. That means that for once, the show viewers got a leg up on book readers. Ha! Take that, people who read. Number 62. In First of His Name, Lysa gives Sansa lemon cakes before suddenly going full psycho and accusing her of having sex with Baelish. The scene required multiple takes, so each time, Sophie Turner had to eat another lemon cake on camera. Number 63. The scene from The Law of Gods and Men when Hizdahr zo Loraq begs Daenerys to let him give his father a proper funeral was added to the show. Cogman says that the scene was inspired by the Greek tragedy Antigone. Number 64. Given all the buildup, it was surprising surprising that Yara Greyjoy's rescue attempt ended so quickly and anticlimactically. Cogman says that this was the whole point. It was meant to be a takeout for the audience, and for Yara too, as she intended for it to be huge and epic. Number 65. Originally in this episode, the mutilated remains of Theon's genitals were going to be shown during the bath scene. However, Benioff and Weiss decided that we didn't need to see that. Number 66. The production team wanted a perfect direwolf-shaped piece of bread for hot pie, so rather than bake them all at once until they came out well, they actually made 70 loaves, all at once, and they picked the best from that literal crop of bread. Number 67. Kate Dickie, who played Lysa Arryn, is afraid of heights. Ironic that Lysa dies by being pushed out of a moon door. Also unfortunate for Dickie, who had to dangle on a harness a fair ways off the ground in order to film her death scene. Number 68. Benioff and Weiss specifically picked Barry McGovern to play the dying farmer that talks to Arya and the Hound. McGovern has also appeared in several stage productions of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot and was in the film adaptation of it. The dialogue in that scene is meant to reference the play, so his role just furthers that illusion. Number 69. Mockingbird was the most viewed episode of the season with 7.2 million viewers tuning in. Number 70. In The Mountain and the Viper, Littlefinger seems to foreshadow the deaths of 3 major characters. He tells Robin, people die at their dinner tables, they die in their beds, they die squatting over their chamber pots. Everyone dies sooner or later. Joffrey died at a dinner table, and Shay ends up dying in her bed, and Tywin died squatting over his chamber pot. Never doubt Littlefinger. Number 71. When Pascal took the role of Oberon, he knew right from the start how it would end. Apparently, the creators told him 3 easy steps to getting his head crushed. First his teeth, then his eyes, then his melon head. And just like that, all the dreams of the viewers were shattered. Number 72. To practice using a spear that was a foot taller than him, Pedro Pascal bought a curtain rod from Home Depot and used that. Number 73. Tyrion's cousin, Orson Lannister, doesn't actually exist in the novels and was made up for the show so that Tyrion could muse about the random nature of death. The scene, which lasts 4 minutes, is often brought up when the showrunners say they didn't have time to get certain plot lines, yet they still made up a bug-crushing cousin for Tyrion to monologue about. Number 74. The costumes of the wildlings that are south of the wall are actually the same ones as the north of the wall. They just flip them inside out. Number 75. There isn't just history between Oberon and the Mountain, there's history at the set location. It was a hotel called the Belvedere in the 1980s that was bombed and abandoned. The set dressers actually had to clean the graffiti off of it before it could be used. Number 76. If you were to say that the Mountain crushed Oberon's head like a watermelon, that wouldn't be a total exaggeration. A crushed watermelon was just one of the sound effects used to bring that scene to life. Number 77. The Watchers on the Wall was directed by Neil Marshall, who had previously directed the other big battle solo episode, Blackwater. Guess he's the specialist in that very specific type of episode. Number 78. Neil Marshall makes a cameo in his own episode as one of the archers. Apparently archery is actually a hobby of his. Number 79. Marshall was nominated for the 66th Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Direction for a Drama Series for this episode. Number 80. The 360 shot of the Battle of Castle Black took 2 hours to block out, and 7 takes to get the 360 shot perfectly right. Ultimately, the first one was used in the final cut since it was actually the smoothest. Number 81. Unlike in the show, Pip and Gren don't actually die in the books. The creators decided to kill them off this episode to show the cost of the battle and to have dramatic impact that resonated with the audience. Number 82. For her kissing scene with Samwell, Murray intentionally didn't kiss back. She figured that Craster never kissed her, and she probably had never seen outside of his keep, so it'd be really weird for Gilly when Samwell just smashes his mouth all up on hers. Number 83. The production team couldn't get the spy owl that Fen wargs into land on the right mark. They went at it for 2 hours until the director was about to give up and go for a CGI owl. At last, out of fears of being replaced by computer imagery, the owl finally got it. Number 84. Ollie isn't in the novels, they wrote him into the show. He was originally going to appear in 1 episode until writer's assistant Dave Hill recommended that he join the Night's Watch and that he be the one to kill Ygritte. Needless to say, Hill is now a full-time Game of Thrones writer. Number 85. The giant Dongo was called Dongo the Doomed on set due to his unfortunate counter with the point end of an arrow. Dongo is, or was, played by Ian White, who has also played a White Walker and the Mountain back in season 2. Number 86. What's the connection to the French Connection? The scene where Jimmy Doyle shoots Nikolai was inspired by Dongo's fall after being shot. Number 87. The other giant is played by Neil Fingleton, also known as UK's tallest man. He stands at 7'11". Number 88. Ygritte's arrows are all CGI, as the character fires them far too quickly for actor Rose Leslie to actually do it for real. She just mimics the action and they add them in later. Number 89. When Ygritte dies, the production team wanted to show Jon Snow's point of view on the whole situation. To achieve this, they used slow motion, something they employ very sparingly to lessen the cheese factor, and had Leslie re-record her lines, gasps, and breaths so they could be played cleanly without any battle sounds blaring in the background. Number 90. Her death was the last scene that Leslie filmed. She's thankful for that, since she would have found it difficult to go back to filming regular scenes after it. Number 91. As a souvenir, the crew gave Leslie Ygritte's bow with a plaque on it that said "Kissed by Fire." Number 92. The opening of the episode The Children was inspired by the film Point Blank. Director Alex Graves modeled the scene of Jon Snow making his way towards Mance Rayder after the scene where Lee Marvin makes his way down a corridor. Number 93. There's another classic movie reference, this time Citizen Kane. It's the shot where Jon Snow lights Ygritte's funeral pyre, then steps in front of the show. That's an allusion to Orson Welles walking downstage into a shadow. Number 94. Ever wonder why Brienne and Podrick lose their horses? Because it's not all Podrick's fault. As it turns out, you can legally import horses from Northern Ireland into Iceland, where that scene was shot. So to remedy that, the horses just wandered off in the night. Number 95. One of the notes in the script for The Children pointed out that Brienne and Arya are both weirdos, but they like each other. Number 96. When the Hound grabs Brienne's sword with his bare hands, it's an allusion to the 1995 film Rob Roy. In that movie, Liam Neeson does the same thing during a climactic sword battle. Number 97. The song in the background as Tyrion kills Tywin is The Rains of Castamere. It was also the song that played at the Red Wedding before the slaughter. A song all about Tywin's victory, now played over his embarrassing death. Number 98. The Children aired on Father's Day in 2014, leading to an onslaught of memes about Tyrion killing Tywin that episode. Number 99. Bjornsson, who plays the Mountain, was exhausted from all of his stunt work and from being so massive or whatever that he kept falling asleep during the scene in which Qyburn is examining his body. They had to wake him up repeatedly though, as his snoring kept overpowering Heady's lines. Number 100. The Children got Benioff and Weiss nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series. Number 101. In addition to the ones we've already mentioned, this season had a handful of notable differences from the novel. For one, they cut out Lady Stoneheart completely. In the book, Stoneheart is Catelyn Stark resurrected by a disciple of the Lord of Lights who is out for revenge. Number 102. Another big one is the death of Jojen. In the books, he actually hasn't died. Number 103. In the books, Ramsay Snow is only seen from other people's perspectives, so in all the interactions between him and Roose Bolton are fabricated by the show. Maybe in an attempt to make Ramsay seem like more than a horrible, sadistic flaying machine?
This is turning into a lovely evening.
Number 104. This one was controversial. In the books, Jaime revealed to Tyrion that Tywin lied about his old flame Tysha being a whore and that she was actually a perfectly normal girl. This creates friction between Jaime and Tyrion and fuels his desire to murder Tywin. The show omitted this, having the brothers end on good terms instead. Number 105. Want us to ruin dragons for you forever? Turns out, for the sound of their screams, the audio team uses, among other things, the sounds of tortoises mating. Number 106. Remember what we said earlier about having nothing you hold dear being sacred? Unsurprisingly, season 4 brought the highest body count of any thus far with 182 deaths. Number 107. Season 4 received monumentally positive attention, currently holding the highest score of any season on Metacritic. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has the second lowest of any season, but the second lowest is 96%, so you've got nothing to worry about.
At this point, we started catching up with the show in real time. That's right, we got the 5th season worth of facts ready just as season 6 was getting ready to come out. Folks were ready for more Westeros action, and by golly, we were gonna keep them in the loop. Was Jon Snow really dead? Only one way to find out. This is 107 Game of Thrones Season 5 Facts You Should Know.
Previously on Cinematica, we covered Season 4 of HBO's poster child for blood, sex, and dragons, Game of Thrones. We discussed the rise of kings and queens, family betrayal, and death by ego. But nothing compares to the shock and awe fans felt during Season 5. Think you know all the intricacies of the series' most viewed season to date? I'm Jillian Leff with Cinematica, and we're here to fill you in on how cast and crew managed to make the show more epic than ever in Season 5, encapsulating battles, intriguing new characters, and many, many jarring scenes made this one of the most controversial and successful seasons to date. Whether you're a diehard fan or just wondering what all the fuss is about, we've got something for everyone as we count down the 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 5. Let's get started. Number 1. On April 8th, 2014, just as Season 4 was starting up and shattering viewership records, HBO greenlit Seasons 5 and 6. Number 2. Unlike previous seasons, Season 5 covered material from 3 books in George R.R. Martin's series: A Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance with Dragons, as well as some original ideas. Number 3. The crew started filming Season 5 at the end of July 2014, only a month after the Season 4 finale. Number 4. This season had a massive 166 cast members, over 1,000 crew members, and well over 5,000 extras. Number 5. There were more than 86,000 applications submitted from all over the world just for a role as a background extra. Needless to say, people really want to be a part of the series, even if chances are they'd only get a split second of screen time. Number 6. Season 5 was shot in 5 countries: Northern Ireland, Croatia, Iceland, Canada, and a new location to the series, Spain. Number 7. In those 5 countries, the cast and crew utilized a total of 151 sets. That's as many sets as there are original Pokemon. Number 8. While past seasons saw Iceland used for great expeditions north of the Wall, no cast member had to make the trek to the country for Season 5. Instead, only a small crew turned up in the snow-covered national parks to record some landscape shots. Number 9. Since Season 1, the show's creators have wanted to work with Andrew Simpson, an expert in wolf training. His company Instinct Animals for Film has been getting the wild creatures ready for Hollywood for over 2 decades, so it makes sense a show as wildly successful as Game of Thrones would want the best wolves around. Unfortunately for the creators, Andrew was always too busy with other projects to help out. But finally, for Season 5, they got their wish and hired Andrew's wolf Quigley to play Jon Snow's direwolf companion, Ghost. Number 10. The team originally wanted to fly Andrew and Quigley out to Northern Ireland, but decided it was easier just to visit them in Canada to shoot the scenes in Calgary. Number 11. Mahuramore Quarry in County Antrim of Northern Ireland was used for Castle Black in Season 1. Then, in Season 2, the walls of King's Landing were built there for the Battle of Blackwater. And for Season 5, the small fishing village of Hardhome took advantage of the location. Number 12. The cast and crew also made a return to Dubrovnik, Croatia this season, once again having to lug their equipment through the city's narrow medieval streets and up countless stone steps for the scenes in King's Landing. Number 13. One of the harder scenes to watch in Season 5, now there are several, is Cersei's Walk of Penance, which was filmed in the Stradon, which is the main street of Dubrovnik. The team had crawled up those very steps countless times, but had yet to utilize them for any scenes. Number 14. The walk was actually based off of real-life events that happened to King Edward IV's mistress, Jane Shore. For conspiring against the king, Shore was made to walk around town in more or less her underwear in 1483. This is but one of the many events in Game of Thrones in which Martin has based fiction on history. Number 15. However, Cersei wasn't as lucky as Jane and had to perform her walk 100% buck naked. For several reasons, Heidi chose to use a body double named Rebecca Van Cleve for her fully nude shots during the lengthy Walk of Shame. Number 16. North of Dubrovnik lies Split, a location used in previous seasons and again for Season 5. Here, the cellars of Diocletian's palace have been repurposed from marine underground passageways to the dungeon in which Daenerys keeps her dragons bound. Number 17. Still in Croatia but west of Split is a town called Castel Gomulika, which was used for one of my personal favorite scenes in the entire Game of Thrones. Do you know which one that is? I'll give you a hint. Oysters, clams, and cockles. Number 18. The Alcazar is a royal palace in Seville, Spain, and one of the most visited locations in the country with up to 8,000 tourists per day. The crew stormed the Alcazar during Season 5 and had it represent parts of Dorne, including the water gardens and the seat of House Martell, Sunspear. Number 19. Due to the layout of the palace, the crew had to bring in cranes and platforms to get equipment to certain locations. I'm sure the crew is used to all this kind of stuff by now. Number 20. Osuna is a town in the province of Seville, Spain, which is home to the Plaza de Toros, a 100-year-old bullfighting ring that's transformed in the Great Pit of Daznak, aka the Fighting Pit of Marine. Number 21. Though only one scene was shot at Osuna's Plaza de Toros, the crew shot there for 12 days. Number 22. To make the pit seem even more grandiose, around 1,000 extras were brought in for the crowd. Then, they were digitally multiplied to fill the upper levels of the Colosseum, which were also computer generated. Number 23. For Episode 3, the crew shut down the Roman Bridge in Cordoba, Spain to shoot scenes for the Long Bridge of Voltanus. Number 24. The layout of Braavos was inspired by Venice, Italy. Well, a crazy rich and powerful Venice, Italy with a statue that puts good old Lady Liberty to shame. Number 25. All in all, there were 120 days of filming for season 5. That's 120 days per crew, so using that handy thing we call mathematics,
Shame.
that's 240 days of filming between the two. Number 26. During those 240 days of filming, there were a total of 1,390 special effects shots, nearly 500 of which were just for the Hard Home episode. Number 27. Duncan Mugac worked as a line producer for the Croatia location in season 4 and tacked on Spain with the help of first-timer Peter Welter Solar during season 5. Number 28. Michael Slovis, known for his work with many popular television series including Breaking Bad, 30 Rock, and Law & Order SVU, directed episodes 1, The Wars to Come, and 2, The House of Black and White. Number 29. Episodes 3, High Sparrow, and 4, Sons of the Harpy, were directed by Mark Mylod, which seems like an odd choice given his previous directing roles include Entourage and Ali G into House. Number 30. Jeremy Podeswa was brought in for episodes 5, Kill the Boy, and 6, Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken. Unlike Mylod, Podeswa's filmography is riddled with shows more in line with Game of Thrones. Though he never stuck around for long, he's worked on many noteworthy series such as The Walking Dead, Camelot, The Tudors, and The Pacific. Number 31. Miguel Sapochnik took on episodes 7, The Gift, and 8, Hard Home. Having previously worked on Repo Men, Fringe, and Under the Dome, Sapochnik has definitely spent some time with action-packed dramas. Number 32. The only director returning from past seasons of Game of Thrones is David Nutter, who directed the final 2 episodes of season 5, A Dance of Dragons and Mother's Mercy. If you know how these last 2 episodes go down, you know they're quite shocking, but this isn't the first time Nutter has surprised us. He was also the director behind the episode titled The Reigns of Castamere, aka the Red Wedding episode. Number 33. Show creators and executive producers David Benioff and D.B. Weiss returned to the series, but for the first time since season 2, they did not step in to direct any episodes. Number 34. The magnificent duo did, however, continue their trend of writing a majority of the episodes. Number 35. Everyone knows that Martin has written a single episode for each of the previous Game of Thrones seasons, but the legendary storyteller opted to stand aside for season 5 in order to focus on his next book, titled The Winds of Winter. Number 36. Episode 4, The Sons of Harpy, was written by Dave Hill. It's his first episode, but not his first time dealing with the Game of Thrones world. Hill began as Benioff and Weiss's assistant. Number 37. Brian Cogman makes a return to the series, this time as both a producer and a writer. Number 38. Peter Dinklage was the only actor to get a perfect score in season 5, appearing as the one and only Tyrion Lannister in all 10 episodes. Number 39. Mr. Peter Dinklage took home another Emmy in 2015 for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series, which marked his 5th time being nominated for that category since the show began. Number 40. Game of Thrones Season 5 actually made history at the 2015 Primetime Emmy Awards, taking home a total of 12 of the coveted golden statues. Number 41. Daenerys, Cersei, Melisandre, and Marjorie all wear wigs made of human hair, which can cost upward to $7,000 each. Number 42. No exact price per episode has ever been discussed for Season 5. Previously, it was estimated that the average cost was about $6 million, but it was recently reported that episodes in Season 6 were average of $10 million. Based on that, assuming the price did go up from Season 3 and 4, the price per episode for Season 5 would be around $8 million. Number 43. Let's bust through some new characters, shall we? We'll start with Oberyn Sand, the oldest bastard child of Oberyn Martell and member of the Sand Snakes. This spear-wielding badass is played by Oscar-nominated actress Keisha Castle Hughes, whose role in the 2000 film Whale Rider earned her some serious recognition at the age of 12. Number 44. Nymeria Nym Sand is the second of 8 bastards of Oberyn's and a master of bullwhip combat. She's played by Jessica Henwick, whom you may not recognize, but she actually played X-Wing fighter pilot Just Pava, aka Tester, in Star Wars The Force Awakens. Number 45. Actress Rosabelle Laurenti Sellers, who was once cast as Anne Frank, takes on the role of the last of the Sand Snakes introduced in Season 5, the sneaky Tyene Sand, whose skill with daggers is matched by her knowledge of poison. Number 46. Taking Amy Richardson's place as the secret daughter of Cersei and Jaime Lannister is young actress Nell Tiger Free. Number 47. A few days after the recasting announcement at San Diego Comic-Con 2014, ex-Marcella Amy Richardson posted a comical vine which had her sitting on the streets holding a Princess for Hire sign. Don't worry, Amy, the role didn't last long without you.
fella.
Number 48. Troy Sebastian was cast for season 5 to play Tristan Martell, Prince Doran's son who was promised to Marcella Baratheon as a form of an alliance between the Martells and the Lannisters. Number 49. Speaking of Doran, did you know he once traveled around the galaxy? Well, Alexander Siddig, the actor cast as Doran, did, sort of. In the 90s, Siddig was a part of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, in which he played Dr. Julian Bashir. Number 50. Remember that dude with the massive axe that could have easily taken out Jaime Lannister? That's Ario Hota, played by Dobia Aparai. He's acted in a ton of films, from Alien 3 to Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides to Doom and even Moulin Rouge. Number 51. Enzo Cilenti is another new cast member in season 5. He plays Yezan Zodagas, one of the old masters of Marine who ends up purchasing Jorah Mormont and Tyrion Lannister at a slave auction. Number 52. The waif, an acolyte of the Faceless Man, is introduced in season 5 and helps train Arya inside the House of Black and White. Funny enough, actress Faye Marsay, who plays the character, also had a role in the 2014 Doctor Who Christmas special titled Last Christmas, in which her character Shauna had plans to marathon Game of Thrones during her Christmas break. Number 53. In August 2014, it was announced that J.J. Murray, an 86-year-old Irish actor, had passed away 4 days after filming his role as Dennis Mallister, the oldest member of the Night's Watch. Days later, the official Game of Thrones Twitter posted that the part would not be recast, as Murphy was the perfect fit. Number 54. Last up for the new actors is a man who's been around the block a few dozen times. Award-winning actor Jonathan Pryce picked up the part of the game-changing character, the High Sparrow. Number 55. Season 5 marked an odd crossroad for the series, as Bran Stark's storyline had caught up with the novels. Instead of making everything up, the show's creative heads chose to instead put Bran, Hodor, Asha, and Rickon on hiatus for a year, which absolutely killed me. Number 56. At an event in Teatro Central de Sevilla, Benioff and Weiss spoke about the 5th season, admitting that despite having said they'd never use flashbacks, this season was going to feature at least one. Number 57. Episode 1, The Wars to Come, was the last episode for actor Charles Dance, as his role during this episode was to play a dead Tywin Lannister. Number 58. This season opens up with a young Cersei and her friend venturing into the woods to find a witch who is said to be able to tell the future. Eventually they find the witch's wooden, and when they enter, the two girls teleport, kind of. This is because the crew made 2 huts, one in a forest outside of Belfast for the exterior shots, and one inside a studio for the interior shots. Number 59. Dave Hill gives another example of the scene in which Jon Snow and Melisandre are riding the lift to the top of the wall at Castle Black. While the lift does exist at their Castle Black set, the close-up shots were filmed in a Belfast studio. Number 60. One of the more comical scenes during the season happens in a brothel when Tyrion is passed by a prostitute resembling the one and only Daenerys. Only as his view shifts to her backside, he quickly notices that her dress is missing quite a bit of fabric around the booty region. The idea behind this interesting garb started as a joke by costume designer Michelle Clapton, who said Benioff and Weiss were always asking for egregious things, so she told them she was going to make a costume with no ass. Number 61. The actress Samantha Bentley also appeared in the past season in Bravos, as well as some adult entertainment films in real life. On top of that, she DJs and owns a pug. Number 62. Daenerys' outfits are always worth mentioning, as they are designed to reflect her position in life. Season 5 marks a new form for the Mother of Dragons. As Clapton describes, she now feels a sense of power and immortality, so to give her an untouchable quality, the designer made a lot of white and pale gray costumes for her to wear. Number 63. Believe it or not, all of Dany's wardrobe consists of boots and trousers. No matter the dress, she's always prepared to flee. Number 64. The wedding dress that Sansa wore during her marriage to Ramsay has a lot of symbolism built into it. The fur piece is meant to represent her father and brothers, the fish clasps are for her mother's house, and the shape was inspired by the statues in the crypts of Winterfell. Number 65. Sansa's dress also proved to be as opposed to the marriage as she was. Every time she walked down the snow-covered path during takes, the dress acted like a plow, clearing the snow entirely. Number 66. When stills of the Sand Snake's leather armor popped up online, many fans were displeased by the, well, nipples protruding from the chest pieces. Martin has used the line "as useless as nipples on a breastplate" a few times throughout the series. Number 67. Jacob Anderson, the actor who plays the unsullied Grey Worm, talked about why his character, who isn't supposed to feel pain, had such an intense reaction to being stabbed in episode 4. He said, having discussed the topic several times with Weiss and Benioff, as time passes, Grey Worm becomes more human. The character later reveals that he was not in so much pain, but more afraid of losing his sort of love interest, Missandei. Number 68. Lancel Lannister makes a return in season 5. Last we saw him, he had luscious locks and had been having some naughty time with Cersei back in season 2. Skip over 2 seasons and he now has a buzz cut and he's a member of the Sparrows, having pleaded forgiveness for his past sins. Number 69. Eugene Simon, who plays Lancel, grew out his nails for 3 months before filming, as his character was meant to be unkempt. Before shooting, he had cut vertical lines in his nails so that when he gripped the side of the table during the scene, they'd actually break. Ow! Number 70. One of the earlier surprise deaths of the season is Ian McKilney's character, Sir Barristan. Knowing his days were numbered, he pleaded a case against his death with Weiss and Benioff, but their minds had been made. Number 71. The Stone Men of Valyria, shown in episode 5, had to go through a 4-hour makeup application process. One of the actors compared the completed look to feeling like an uncomfortable wetsuit on his face. Number 72. Since we're on about grayscale, we may as well bring up Shireen Baratheon. In episode 9, The Dance of Dragons, she is sacrificed to the Lord of Light, though this scene doesn't actually take place in the books. Martin gave the team the go-ahead to include in the show. Number 73. We may have seen Dorne before episode 4, but this was the first episode to depict the city during the show's iconic opening. Number 74. The massacre at Hardhome was not present in the book. It was mentioned that something bad happened there, but it was never fleshed out. Number 75. Mahura Morn Quarry was not the original location planned for Hardhome. The team had planned to shoot in Iceland, but after going over the scenes, the executive producers agreed there was no way that was going to happen. Instead, they constructed the village in Northern Ireland and digitally added previously mentioned landscape shots in Iceland into the background. Number 76. Remember that massive palisade mentioned earlier? Well, if you recall, there's a scene in which the Army of the Dead topple a section during their invasion. That 40-foot section of the fence actually came down. That's not CG. Number 77. Wun is the giant present in Hardhome. Sadly, there was no actual giant during filming of the scene, and he was added in post. The FX team did, however, have a 16-foot tall cone constructed, lined with cargo net, and placed on a mechanical bull rig so they could have stuntmen leaping onto it and scaling to get motion capture footage for the whites that leap on Wun during the escape. Number 78. The moment at the end of the Hardhome episode in which the Night's King raises all the dead and makes eye contact with Jon Snow was described in the script as an unpleasant exchange that is not comfortable for Jon, but the crew simply referred to it as a nonverbal "f*** you," which I personally think sums it up better. Number 79. The Hall of Faces set consists of roughly 600 prosthetic faces, which were created using over 30 extras and crew members as models. Number 80. In the books, Jaqen H'ghar is not the one to meet Arya at the House of Black and White, but Weiss and Benioff decided that instead of adding yet another character to an already slightly confusing story, they were just going to use Jaqen instead because he and Arya had history, and history makes for dramatic tension. Number 81. Jessica Henwick, Rosabelle Laurenti Sellers, and Keisha Castle Hughes were all living in different parts of the world during their combat training. Stunt coordinator Rowley Earlum explains that they had to hire a trainer in each country to work with the Sand Snakes. Jessica was in London, Rosabelle was in Italy, and Keisha was in New Zealand. Number 82. In episode 4, there's a scene in which Sansa is wandering about the crypts of Winterfell and finds a feather placed on the grave of her Aunt Lyanna. Yeah, that's the same feather Robert Baratheon put there during the very first episode. Number 83. The Palisade of Hardhome was constructed to take a full beating by the cast. The log wall spans about 300 feet in length and reaches up around 18 feet high. Number 84. The epic scene that concluded the visit to Hardhome took 3 whole weeks to shoot. Number 85. If you think that's crazy, just take into consideration that they had to bring in 2 crews of people for 3 weeks just to get the quarry covered in artificial snow. Number 86. There were about 220 extras used during the massacre of Hardhome. Number 87. Originally, the events at Hardhome were going to be on an even larger scale, but Weiss and Benioff weren't sure how they were going to pull it off until the aforementioned director Miguel Sapochnik suggested bringing a majority of the action behind the gates and keeping the White Walker army out of sight until they stormed the village. Number 88. The Army of the Dead that takes out Hardhome was designed in 3 stages. The first stage, dubbed Super Fresh by the crew, are people that have only been dead for a couple of weeks. Then there's Mid-Decompose, who have been dead for 6 months to 2 years, and lastly there are green screens, which have actors in green bodysuits and partial makeup so that their body parts can be digitally altered to be far more skeletal. Number 89. That awesome sword wielded by the White Walker Jon Snow takes on isn't made of ice at all. The show's weapon master Tommy Dunn explains that it's made out of a new translucent rubber that is super durable and can even be used in combat. Number 90. Ian Glenn got the framework for his fights 2.5 months before shooting, but only a week before the cameras began rolling to work alongside the stuntmen that he'd be clashing weapons with. Number 91. The jaw-dropping scene that takes place in the marine fighting pits between Daenerys and her dragon Drogon was fully orchestrated by director David Nutter over a sound system. Number 92. Drogon was nothing more than a lime green stick with a matching ball on the end of it in which Emilia Clarke and the cast had to interact with. Number 93. For the scene in which Dany was climbing all over her sleepy and wounded dragon, Clarke was made to ride on a green bucking bronco-type machine to really get the sense of what it'd be like climbing on the back of such a large beast. Number 94. Were you ever curious as to how the team got Arya to meet face-to-face with, well, her face? The crew crafted a rigid cloak for continuity and then had several people lie in it while Maisie made the hand motion of pulling off their face. When it came time for Maisie to get into the cloak, a body double was brought in to make the hand motion, revealing Maisie's face. Number 95. In that same scene, Arya goes blind, hopefully only temporarily. For that shot, the team had to lift Maisie's eyelids and slide in 16mm wide contacts. Number 96. Jon Snow's death was a pretty complicated scene to set up. In order to get the effect of Jon bleeding out, his armor as well as his polystyrene snow beneath him were rigged with tubes that pumped blood. Number 97. After the beloved character's death, Martin was bombarded by one simple question: why? His brief answer was, "You think he's dead, do you?" Number 98. Game of Thrones Season 5 finished filming on December 11th, 2015, with its last scene shot in Ireland. Number 99. Between January 29th and February 5th, 2015, remastered IMAX versions of the last 2 episodes of Season 4 were shown around 200 theaters in the US. Viewers of these shows were also treated with an exclusive worldwide debut of the Season 5 trailer. Number 100. Before the season even began, actor Alfie Allen, known for his role as Theon Reek Greyjoy, told fans to brace themselves for a very disturbing scene coming at about the halfway point. The scene he was alluding to is, of course, Ramsay's rape of Sansa on their wedding night. As a result, Unbent, Unbowed, Unbroken is the lowest rated episode in the entirety of Game of Thrones. Number 101. Due to the uproar caused by episode 6, the show saw a sharp drop down to 5.4 million viewers for episode 7, titled The Gift. Number 102. Despite the controversial changes made, season 5 is still the second highest rated season on both Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. Number 103. Mother's Mercy had the highest viewership of any episode of Game of Thrones with an astounding 8.11 million viewers, which is up over 1 million from season 4's finale. Number 104. Overall, season 5 averaged out at about 6.88 million viewers per episode, which is a larger viewership than any previous season. But HBO went even further by confirming the number to be even higher due to the surge of viewers that switched over to HBO Go. Number 105. For the first time in Game of Thrones history, season 5 became available for digital download months before its Blu-ray and DVD release on March 15th, 2016. Number 106. Game of Thrones made it into the Guinness Book of World Records 2016 for the largest TV drama simulcast for episode 5, Kill the Boy, which was broadcast in 173 countries. Number 107. In 2016, the Screenwriters' Choice Award named Game of Thrones Best Television Drama. Runner-ups include Downton Abbey and Fargo.
And of course, we had to make sure folks were ready for Season 7 by amassing facts about Season 6. This is 107 Game of Thrones Season 6 facts you should know.
It's been an extra long wait for Game of Thrones Season 7, but this summer, winter is finally coming back. With such a huge gap between the seasons, it's easy to forget all the little Easter eggs and book references that you memorized during Season 6. But worry not, we've got you covered. This is Kyle with Cinematica, and we've got 20/20 green sight on all the secrets from last year, including the 2-year-long death and return of Jon Snow, as well as the production of the massive blockbuster rivaling final 2 episodes. So hold on to your crowns for 107 facts you should know about Game of Thrones Season 6. Let's get started. Game of Thrones Season 6 was filmed from July to December of 2015 and first aired from April 24th to June 26th of 2016. HBO ordered the 6th season in a bundled package with the 5th season all the way back in 2014, just days after the premiere of the 4th season. That's a pretty sweet deal. George R.R. Martin did not return to write an episode of the 6th season as he did in the first 4 seasons. He planned to use that free time to focus on writing the the next damn book! Come on, George, hurry up! After sitting out for the entirety of Season 5, Bran, Mira, and Hodor finally return to continue their mystical tree plotline. Also returning from the bench are Yara and Balon Greyjoy, and the Tullys, Brendan and Edmure. Jonathan Pryce, who plays the High Sparrow, became a series regular this season. You probably recognize him as the president from the G.I. Joe movies or Governor Swan from the Pirates of the Caribbean films. It wouldn't be a new season of Game of Thrones without some obvious recasts. Strawn Roger, who played the Three-Eyed Raven back in Season 4, has now been replaced by Max von Sydow. You may recognize him from his recent role as Lor San Tekka from Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens, in which he played another old mentor character. The Children of the Forest were recast as non-children-sized actors. Some think this was meant to show that time had passed, while others theorize that Leaf, originally played by Octavia Alexandru, was replaced by an older, more experienced actress, Kay Alexander, because the character was given more lines and screen time. Myrcella's death was originally way more violent. At first, she was given bloodied bananas as fake brains that she was going to spew all over the ship. However, the creators decided to give her a death more fitting of her life, and that's short and sweet. Book readers may have found Doran Martell's sudden murder at the beginning of Season 6 shocking. After all, he's still kicking around in the books. Turns out actor Alexander Siddig was just as shocked. He was contracted for 4 episodes in Season 6 before getting the call that he'd been axed in the first episode. Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys Targaryen, once decided to translate Hansen's Mbop into the fictitious language Dothraki and recited it during a take while the cameras were off her. Book readers have long speculated that Melisandre is much older than she looks. In the first episode of the season, it's confirmed that the elaborate necklace she never takes off is what keeps her young. Some viewers noted that in Season 4, one scene between Melisandre and Selyse depicts the Red Woman necklaceless, but still in her youthful form. It's likely a continuity error, though others suppose that Selyse is seeing her unglamorous form, but the audience isn't. George R.R. Martin revealed this twist to Melisandre's actress, Carice Van Houten, early on so that she'd be able to play the character as much older and wiser than everyone else. It's why she's so condescending to visibly older characters like Davos. To film these scenes, Carice Van Houten wore aging prosthetics, and then her head was digitally added onto a body double. Director Jeremy Podeswa opted for the body double because he didn't want to use a CGI body. In the scenes where Arya is blind, Maisie Williams wore huge, white 16mm contact lenses that actually did impair her ability to see. Fortunately, she only wore them during dialogue scenes. During fight scenes, she got a different set of lenses with holes so she could see. The makeup for the Children of the Forest was so extensive that it required over 9 hours to apply it. If Kay Alexander needed to be on set by 9 a.m., it meant that she had to get picked up at midnight. The show's creators withheld much of the Iron Islands plotline until this season. They cut most of Theon's uncles from earlier seasons as to not open a storyline they couldn't finish. Fortunately, Euron was always gone from the Iron Islands anyway, so his return in the episode Home doesn't feel quite so out of place. Danish actor Palu Asbeck was cast as Euron Greyjoy, Theon's estranged uncle. News of Asbeck's casting was leaked after he was spotted during a production day, so when he finally got home and checked his phone, he had about 200 missed calls and text messages about it. In the episode Home, young Ned Stark tells his brother in Bran's Greenside vision,
"Keep your shield up, or I'll ring your head like a bell."
A line that was also used by Jon Snow when he was teaching Ollie to fight.
Keep your shield up, or I'll ring your head like a bell.
This subtly reinforces the fact that Jon thought of Ollie like a brother, making his betrayal of Snow and his subsequent hanging hurt all the more. The cellar where Daenerys stored her dragons was located in a palace in Croatia, a set that the show no longer uses. For Tyrion's venture down into the crypt, they recreated the entire room digitally. Most actors get asked for autographs. However, after Jon Snow's death, Alistair Thorne's actor, Owen Teale, was approached by fans with knives. They wanted pictures with him pretending to stab them and scream "bastard" at them. Yikes. Still, that's probably better than Conleth Hill's fan experience. He was approached hand first by a fan who wanted to check if he really had anything, missing in the crotch area. I don't think Theon would find that too funny. 10 long months after his shocking murder, and after 2 years of secrecy from actor Kit Harington, Jon Snow returned from the dead this season. And what did he have to say for it? Sorry. Harington even had to lie to his fellow castmates about his death, with mixed results. Sophie Turner sent him a long letter about what an influence he was on her and how much she enjoyed working with him, while Liam Cunningham just told Harington to f off. For the entire season, it was prohibited to even speak the words Jon Snow on set. Instead, every script, call sheet, and scene breakdown referred to him only as LC, short for Lord Commander. Only a handful of people were allowed to know the truth about Jon Snow: Kit Harington's close friends, family, and a random police officer. Wait, what? To get out of a speeding ticket, Kit Harington actually revealed Jon Snow's fate to the cop who pulled him over. Following the success of Netflix's Stranger Things, the show's creators reached out to the Game of Thrones producers to learn about the secret code names and spy tactics that, among other things, kept Jon Snow's death under wraps. The plan didn't quite go off without issue though. Photos were leaked of Kit Harington in Belfast with a new haircut and all new duds, starting early whispers that Jon Snow may not be dead after all. The show generally avoids using flashbacks since the creators consider it to be a lazy storytelling device. This season, however, they did use flashbacks for Bran. Apparently, Green Seeing is different because Bran's reactions to them create compelling character moments for him. The other advantage of flashbacks is being able to mess with the information that the audience thinks they know. Ned's famous sword battle with Sir Arthur, for instance, plays out rather differently than the Winterfell history books portray it. To increase suspense building up to the fight at the Tower of Joy, director Dan Sackheim took cues from Once Upon a Time in the West. Rather than starting the flashback at the duel, Sackheim rewound the clock further to emphasize the moment leading up to the historic battle. Sackheim also explained the choice to have Arthur Dayne use dual swords rather than his weapon, Dawn. He said that he wanted to make Dayne appear almost superhuman and that they couldn't pull that off with just one sword. The idea came from a video of Bruce Lee using a pair of nunchucks to play ping pong. The framing of Jon Snow rising from the dead was inspired by depictions of Jesus' resurrection by Italian painter Caravaggio. The director employed a heavy lighting contrast known as chiaroscuro to achieve the desired look. Many Shaggy Dog Lives conspiracists point out that the direwolf's severed head, as seen in the episode Oathbreaker, appeared way too small to be a direwolf. Episode director Dan Sackheim admitted that he thought the same thing when he first saw it, but the creature maker assured him that everything was up to snuff. Tyrion's failed attempt at breaking the ice with Missandei and Grey Worm using a drinking game is a callback to the same game he played with Bronn and Shae way back in season 1, with quite a different outcome. To attain the sheer awkwardness of the scene, Sackheim shot Missandei and Grey Worm's side first and gave them very little direction as to what they were supposed to be doing. Jon Snow and Sansa's long-awaited meetup in Book of the Stranger may be a sweet reunion, but the two never actually spoke to one another on camera prior to that scene. This episode depicts the uncanny reunion of three brother-sister pairs: Jon Snow and Sansa at the Wall, Marjorie and Loras at King's Landing, and Theon and Yara at the Iron Islands. Hey Brienne and Tormund shippers, there's a deleted scene where Sansa goes all mean girls on Brienne, making fun of Tormund's crush on her and flustering the mighty warrior. Also note, Christopher Hivju, who plays Tormund, calls their shipper name Bremond the Tarthbane. According to George R.R. Martin, Daenerys was not written to be fireproof. Her original survival at the funeral pyre was a one-time only situation, all thanks to her dragon eggs. For the show, however, they turned that fluke into a full immunity, taking her moniker the Unburnt literally. The show even alluded to her immunity earlier in season 1 when she touches her egg without getting burned. Those flames, by the way, were real. Of course, they didn't have Emilia Clarke walk through them. Her part was filmed separately and added later. Apparently, even with modern technology, fire is hard to fake with CGI. Dragons, sure, but not fire. Sackheim chose to bookend Oathbreaker and Book of the Stranger with Jon Snow's icy resurrection and Daenerys' emergence from the fire. He likened both moments to a rebirth and noted that both characters are appropriately garbed in their rebirth day suits. In the episode The Door, we see a 7-spoked spiral pattern of stones surrounding the weirwood trees where the children made the first White Walker. Similar patterns appeared in the first episode of the series and later in season 3's Walk of Punishment, both times made by walkers using body parts. According to David Benioff, this magic icon originated from the Children of the Forest. The Bloody Hand stage play that Arya watches is pulled directly from a plotline in a pre-released preview chapter from the Song of Ice and Fire novel, The Winds of Winter. Actress Essie Davis was cast to play, well, an actress in the show. Her character plays the role of Cersei Lannister in The Bloody Hand. During that play, Icelandic band Of Monsters and Men makes a cameo as the traveling musicians above the stage. This continues Game of Thrones' tradition of having popular alternative musicians make appearances. Season 6, Episode 5 marks the very first time the Mad King ever appeared on screen. Previously, he was only mentioned in passing, but is an essential part of the Game of Thrones lore. The Three-Eyed Raven's cave required a complete overhaul for the White Walker invasion. The set was constructed to be seen briefly and then cut away from, not to be filled with cameras, actors, extras, and special effects. The White Walkers now wear thick armor, something they didn't do in the first few seasons of the show. Turns out they learned something from their fallen brothers' run-in with Samwell and now suit up before their invasions, just in case. For anyone who thinks that that Hodor's heroic origins were made up for the show, George R.R. Martin said that this explanation is straight from the novels, and Book Hodor will soon be meeting a similar fate. Of all the things that Martin revealed to the creators about the remainder of the story, this hit them the hardest. The Hold the Door revelation was one of the 3 big twists that shocked the show creators during their meetup with Martin. The first was Stannis' futile sacrifice of Shireen, which we saw back in season 5. That leaves just one more big moment. Following that episode, the internet erupted in a frenzy of Hodor doorstopper memes. Benioff and Weiss even took to Jimmy Kimmel Live to apologize for the slew of Hold the Door jokes inevitably headed your way. A Game of Thrones fan, Tony Wang, kickstarted the Hodor, a doorstop modeled after Hodor. Unfortunately for Tony Wang, he was shut down by HBO. Luckily for fans, HBO did this because they already planned to sell the idea through another license. During the Inside the Throne segment for Blood of My Blood, D.B. Wise refers to Benjen, who returned in season 6, as Cold Hands Benjen. Cold Hands is a character from the books, not yet adapted in Game of Thrones, and one who is important to the journey of Bran and company. There was an additional scene in The Bloody Hand that poked fun at online reviewers who have criticized the gratuitous violence and profanity of the show, in which the episode's director, Jack Bender, actually agreed with the viewers. He thought that the scene was meant to be self-deprecating, and it's very likely that this misunderstanding is why the scene was cut out. After spending the last 5 years in basically a potato sack, Hannah Murray finally got to change her outfit. She's the longest non-uniform character to go without a wardrobe change. In honor of Murray's new digs, she and Kit Harington played a prank on their co-star John Bradley. The costume department threw together a horrendous King Henry wannabe wardrobe and told Bradley that he would be wearing it on screen once Sam returned home. Bradley didn't think twice about it. By his logic, maybe Sam just dressed like an idiot before going to the wall. The episode The Broken Man started with a cold open, an immediate scene before the title sequence in order to not reveal Rory McCann's name in the opening credits until after he appeared on screen. The Broken Man was written almost as a standalone episode. Writer Brian Cogman calls it a 3-act play that doesn't really feel like the world of Game of Thrones until the end when everyone is slaughtered. You know, a Game of Thrones trademark. Ian McShane's character, Brother Ray, is an original role for the show, but a mashup of 2 smaller characters from the book, Septon Maribald and the Elder Brother. In his press junket, McShane openly admitted that his episode was tied to the return of a beloved character. Pretty much every fan realized he was talking about the Hound. McShane's response to the fiasco? It's only tits and dragons. The title The Broken Man is an allusion to a speech made by Septon Maribald in the book. The speech, a commentary about the sheer horror of war, is considered one of the best written moments in the entire Song of Ice and Fire series. Unfortunately, it didn't make it past that title in the show, but Brother Ray delivers a similarly themed speech. McShane was hired for the role because of the speech. He previously starred on Deadwood, a show known for its soliloquies, so the production team knew that he was the right guy to tackle Ray's sprawling monologues. For Arya and the Waif's big Terminator chase scene in No One, the stunt team prepared many over-the-top stunts for Macy Williams to perform. Williams rejected them though, since Arya is a pragmatist and a survivalist who wouldn't do a crazy dive just for cinematic effect. This season features numerous scenes of Arya getting her ass handed to her by the Waif, which turned out to be easy for the actors since Faye Marcy was a better swordsman than Macy Williams. There was rampant speculation that the Arya we saw get stabbed wasn't Arya at all, but someone else wearing her face. Well, that theory got debunked in No One. Episode director Mark Mylod wanted to remind everyone that Arya is still young and ambitious and therefore prone to making mistakes. Some fans were disappointed to miss the Waif and Arya's battle, or the Blackfish's final stand. Mylod explained that it was because Waif and Arya's battle was in the dark, and because they wanted the Blackfish's last stand to be with Brienne, in order to leave his storyline on an emotional note rather than a violent one. Tyrion once again brings up his brothel story about the honeycomb and the jackass. He last attempted to tell it as a prisoner back in season 1. He's cut off again this time, but with the addition of the line, "and the madame says." The final 2 episodes of season 6 are directed by Miguel Sapochnik. You might recognize his name as he directed the episode Hardhome. Sapochnik's directorial style is notably cinematic because he is influenced by big blockbusters. Battle of the Bastards tapped into films like Saving Private Ryan, Lord of the Rings, and Braveheart. Sapochnik was determined to keep the airborne assault scenes grounded in reality. He referred to actual footage of World War II fighter planes, as well as the framing of fast animals in nature documentaries in order to set up his shots. The Battle of the Bastards went by a different name on set. The horrific bloodbath was affectionately referred to by the cute abbreviation BO. POB. The battle for Winterfell in that episode was completed after 25 days of shooting and was considered the largest scale shoot yet for Game of Thrones. The battle for Winterfell featured around 500 extras. In addition, the Stark and Bolton armies were trained separately to make them more competitive while filming. The series Horsemaster, Camilla Noparis, was hounding the showrunners for more work until Battle of the Bastards used a total of 80 horses, the most she had ever been responsible for on set. The cavalry charge towards Jon Snow was not done in CGI. The horses really were charging full speed at Kit Harington to make the scene feel as real as possible. As Kit Harington put it, it was terrifying. The Battle of the Bastards was inspired by several historic battles, such as the Battle of Agincourt and the Battle of Cannae. Outside of history, Sapochnik also took inspiration from Akira Kurosawa's Ran. The body piles towards the latter half of the battle were inspired by ancient and even some modern battles. In those battles, there were accounts of bodies piling up so high they were obstructions on the battlefield. Every fake body used in the pile was dressed just like the real extras. That meant that they needed the full armor, the proper sigil and shield, and the correct banner or flag. This included the horses as well. Ewan Rayon said that he always wanted to do a scene with Kit Harington. Several seasons later, he got Battle of the Bastards, featuring the first and last scene with Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton. Ramsay's face-beating scene was shot for 10 hours. The director wanted to capture the scene in every angle possible for maximum effect. Sansa's final scene with Ramsay was shot over 12 times because it was important to capture Sansa's smile perfectly. Before telling Rayon about Ramsay's demise, Benioff and Wise joked around saying that it was great that Ramsay ends up on the Iron Throne. As of the season finale, The Winds of Winter, the Stark House sigil has finally been restored to Winterfell in the intro sequence. Since the Boltons took over, it was replaced by the Flayed Man sigil, and prior to that, Winterfell was shown ablaze. The eerie piano track, The Light of the Seven, stands apart from the show's typical compositions and was picked over the Lannister theme music in order to give the scene a sense of foreboding without a clear idea of which character was going to take action. The children's choir you hear in the song is actually just two boys and was inspired by the role of the children in Cersei's scheme. Their vocals harmonized and desynchronized to add tension to the sequence. The finale kicks off with little dialogue, which is unusual for the show. Sapochnik compared the sequence to the scene in Heat where Robert De Niro silently decides to confront his partner and how that silence can speak volumes. Speaking of silent exchanges, that stare down between Jaime and Cersei near the end of the episode almost didn't make the cut. Sapochnik originally cut it out, but the creators decided to keep it. Some fans began to speculate that Jaime the Kingslayer would soon become the Queenslayer. According to Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who plays Jaime, that interpretation of the Valancourt theory is a bit predictable, so keep theorizing. Cersei's immediately iconic supervillain outfit was designed with layers of symbolism. The overall look was meant to evoke the image of Tywin, while the designs on the shoulder pads were reminiscent of Jaime's hand. The dark color depicted Cersei in mourning for her children and her soul. Since the costume designers have to make everything up from scratch, they keep a file of looks and textures for each character year-round that they can use when it's time to make a new uniform. While most cast members don't learn about their demises until just before they get the script, Natalie Dormer knew about Marjorie's death 6 months in advance. She wanted out of the show to pursue another role, so the creators compromised with her. Dean Charles Chapman has now filmed 2 death scenes for the show. In season 6, it's Tommen's, but Chapman also played Martin Lannister in season 3, who was killed by the Karstarks in his prison cell. The show has killed off a king each season since the beginning. It was Robert Baratheon in season 1, his brother Renly in season 2, Robb in season 3, Joffrey in season 4, Mance Rayder and Stannis in season 5, and now Balon Greyjoy and Tommen joined the Dead Kings Club in season 6. The finale finally revealed Jon Snow's parentage after 20 years of speculation, or at least it's revealed that his mom is Lyanna Stark. The show doesn't explicitly say that Rhaegar Targaryen is his father, although an infographic posted on the official Game of Thrones website does. The King in the North scene in the finale is meant to be reminiscent of a similar scene from season 1 in which Robb Stark is declared king. While it's a celebratory moment, we know that it didn't fare well for the previous king, so it comes with the same sense of foreboding. Unlike her character Lyanna Stark, Aisling Franciosi got to meet her TV son. Kit Harington was on set the day they filmed the Tower of Joy scene. However, Franciosi couldn't tell anyone that she met him since at the time he was still publicly dead. Some viewers were confused when Varys made it from Meereen to Dorne and back in just a couple episodes time. This is because each of the season's plot lines take place across varying amounts of time. For instance, most of Arya's plot takes place over a few days, days, while Jon and Sansa's occurs over several weeks. Before Conleth Hill was Varys, he was almost a king. He auditioned for the role of Robert Baratheon way back in the day, just before Mark 80. Daenerys may look ambitious and militant in the final shot on the boat, but Emilia Clarke was so freezing that she found it hard to stay in character. Until Sapochnik advised her to hum the Game of Thrones theme song in her head, clearly that helped because that's the take used in the episode. As of season 6, there have been approximately 150,966 deaths on the show. That's not that many. While it's often said that this season strayed entirely away from the books, there's actually a fair bit of adapted content. This includes the entire King's Moot story arc in the Iron Islands, Samwell and Gilly's journey, and Arya's faceless man. This season featured the highest budget so far. Each episode cost over $10 million, with the season as a whole breaking $100 million. This season also broke the viewership record. It averaged 23 million viewers per episode, counting all viewing platforms. That's a 15% increase over last season, which previously held the series record. Every season has the Wolf unit, the Dragon unit, and season 3 brought us the Raven unit. This season called in the White Walker unit, which is by far the scariest sounding unit. Game of Thrones became the most awarded series in Emmy history this season with 38 wins and 106 nominations, beating the previous record holder, Frasier. This season in particular won Outstanding Drama, Outstanding Directing, and Outstanding Writing. In May of 2016, rumors emerged that Jon Snow would be getting a spin-off series after Game of Thrones ended. Studio executives were quick to deny these rumors, stating that before HBO made plans, they would see how the finale seasons played out and which characters were alive in the end.
The final season of Game of Thrones definitely stirred up some controversy. The ending wasn't what most fans were hoping for, and there were plenty of interesting technical and set dressing issues. Remember the Dark episode? How about the Starbucks cup? Well, let's get back to remembering a whole lot more with 107 Game of Thrones Season 7 facts you should know.
Even in its 7th season, HBO's epic fantasy series, Game of Thrones, is one of the most talked about shows on television, dazzling international audiences with their action-packed battle sequences, steamy romances, jaw-dropping twists of fate, and of course, the dragons. In fact, the only thing this show doesn't offer up is disappointment. Hi, I'm Adrian with Cinematica, and fresh off the tail of the latest season, we thought we'd give fans even more Game of Thrones goodness, with 107 facts about Game of Thrones Season 7. Oh, and consider this a spoiler warning. Let's get started. The season premiere was delayed a few months, premiering in the summer instead of its typical April time slot. The reasoning? Since winter finally arrived in Westeros, the showrunners decided to film during fall to utilize the dead look of the season. The new deadline also resulted in a shorter than usual season, with only 7 episodes announced instead of the usual 10. It was also announced that Season 7 would hold the new record-breaking episodes of the series, containing both the shortest and the longest episode of the entire series. The Spoils of War is the shortest at just 50 minutes, while the season finale is said to be 79, pretty close to a feature film. To avoid the shifty paparazzi from releasing any spoilers, fake scenes were actually filmed to throw them off. In total, the crew shot up to 15 hours worth of fake footage. The end of Season 6 made one thing clear, that winter had arrived in Westeros, and the actors knew that this meant they'd be working with the dreaded snow machines. Apparently when you work with fake snow, you eat a lot of fake snow. While some actors battled it out with the snow machines, others were transported to freezing cold areas like Belfast and Iceland, where the weather dropped as low as -27°C at one point. This season also features many wardrobe improvements and additions. Jacob Anderson, who plays the Unsullied leader Grey Worm, says his old costume was made of such heavy leather that he actually has scars from that tunic. Chief costumer Michelle Clapton revealed that the Night's Watch characters are actually dressed in IKEA rugs. After the announcement, it didn't take long for IKEA to post how-to instructions on building your own Night's Watch cloak. Showrunners D.B. Weiss and David Benioff announced that along with the shortened season, there would be an accelerated pace in the storytelling this year. That's because for the first time in the series, all of the key players are finally coming together. Since all of the characters who have yet to cross paths are now crossing paths in the same continent, fans were previously told to expect most of the stories to start colliding this season. The season premiere's shocking cold open featuring the celebratory feast at Walder Frey's house wasn't originally the opening scene in the script. When the show's creators, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, saw the subtle nuances that actor David Bradley instilled in his performance to show that Walder Frey was actually Arya Stark in disguise, they knew it would make for a much stronger opening. One of Weiss's favorite scenes in the first episode was when the Hound saw the remains of the little girl and farmer he left for dead in Season 4. Apparently, the two almost starved to death before giving up and committing suicide. The burial scene in that episode marks a key moment for the Hound, in which we see just how much he's changed over time. The fact that he buries the remains of the farmer and his daughter shows that he feels guilty for his actions and responsible for their deaths. Samuel Tarly discovers that maester training isn't all it's cracked up to be when he's assigned the gross task of cleaning chamber pots. Apparently, wet fruitcake was used to create the look of the human feces for the chamber pot scene. That scene was amazing and gross, and comment down below if you thought the same. According to John Bradley, this sequence was shot over a period of 5 days. He was also stuck filming alone while the rest of the cast were in LA for the Emmys. During John's speech in the Great Hall, the camera focuses on a few specific characters in the crowd as they eye each other in silence or self-reflect. This was the editor's way of putting emphasis on the exact people who relate to John's message personally. With Tommen's death last season, Cersei has nothing to lose now that her children are gone. The writers claim that nothing will stop her from winning, and that's really what makes Cersei a force to be reckoned with. The outfit Sansa's wearing was created for this season specifically to represent the character's growing strength. Designer Michelle Clapton wanted to reflect on the character's past trauma, so she created a tightly woven outfit that says no one can ever get close. Because the outfit symbolizes Sansa embracing her own past, you may notice little details that are connected to her history, even down to the dress pattern. The stitching resembles fish swimming, as an ode to her mother, who was a Tully. Returning home is a huge game changer for Daenerys, and the writers felt that adding dialogue to her homecoming scene would only take away from that moment. Instead, they have all of her followers give her ample distance to really take in the experience on her own. In episode 2, Daenerys claims to have no memory of her birth. Therefore, her title Stormborn means nothing to her. This actually foreshadows the events of the season. The element she was born under is no longer relevant, and now that she's returned home, she's more fiery than ever. During her meeting with Varys, right as she's about to deem him untrustworthy, you may notice that Daenerys wipes her hands as she addresses him. This is literally addressing the phrase, "wash my hands" of the matter, as if to say she wants nothing to do with him. This episode also shows the return of Arya's beloved pet wolf, Nymeria. The last time we saw Nymeria, Arya was forced to chase her off into the woods to protect her from Cersei. Now she's a massive alpha, running her own pack. When Nymeria declines the offer to rejoin Arya and leaves, Arya responds with "that's not you," which is a direct reference to something Arya herself once said to her father. When her father told her of a life she could have as a lady of a castle married to a high lord, she replied with,
"That's not me."
For co-creator David Benioff, the CG and special effects aren't what make a scene, it's the actor. He praised Maisie Williams for her remarkable performance in the scene with Nymeria, crediting her for bringing the whole scene together with her final expression in the close-up. The scene in Stormborn in the Chamber of the Painted Table was considered to be rather progressive in the eyes of the show's writing staff, as there aren't too many examples in history of television in which several women are discussing power, strategy, and war. Although it wasn't their original intention to make a feminist statement, once they saw the potential, they embraced it. They tried to emphasize each woman's domineering ways while raising the stakes of the conversation, like with the plan to invade Casterly Rock. D.B. Weiss believes that the Chamber of the Painted Table scene wouldn't have been an interesting scene if it were a group of haggard old lords discussing plans of war. The female aspect is what made the scene, and it was a lot more fun to write. Upon meeting the Red Lady Melisandre in the throne room, we learned that the prophecy foretells of a chosen prince or princess. However, considering neither Jon or Dany completely meets the mark, many fans speculate it could actually mean a prince and princess. Jorah Mormont is diagnosed with grayscale disease and is given 6 months before he loses his mind. In order for the visual effects team to apply the prosthetics that created the look of the infection, actor Ian Glenn had to arrive on set at 3 a.m. That's 5 hours earlier than anybody else. 5 extra hands worked on the set that day who were in charge of overseeing pus for Jorah's wounds. Every time John Bradley West removed a section of the prosthetic for the procedure, the visual effects guy would pump the pus through the opening. Ugh. Gross. Samuel claims to have studied grayscale in a book of rare diseases written by Archmaester Pylos. This is a reference to the character Pylos, who was a maester in the books that served Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone. Episode 2 features a pivotal moment for the character Euron, who finally proves that he's a real threat when he invades Yara's ship with his ship, the Silence. The crew had just a few weeks to shoot the Silence battle sequence of Euron's invasion on Yara's ship. There's tons of action and lots of special effects and CG, but all the producers cared about was nailing the actors' close-ups. As a result, this scene was carefully crafted by director Mark Mylod to mostly revolve around the 3 key characters, Euron, Theon, and Yara. The scene's primary focus was originally centered around Yara, until actor Pilo Asbeck caught the director's attention with his charismatic performance. The staff described the sequence as being so much more fun when centered around Euron. When writing the Silent Ship battle sequence, the creative staff had to consider Theon's actions during the chaos. Initially, they had considered the character to be completely over his traumatic past as Ramsay Snow's personal servant, but then they realized that it should come back to haunt him and affect his decision-making with the scene. Since fire is still one of the hardest effects to replicate, the visual effects team preferred using real fires for the Silent Ship battle sequence. To add to the effect, they created ember guns which shot out fire embers from above. In that same scene, you might notice Euron's men are cutting off tongues of their enemies. The practice is mentioned in the books and done to prevent mutiny. Ilaria and Yara's romantic scene, for the most part, was improvised. Yara's actress said it wasn't directed that we would kiss. It just seemed like something we should do. We let it, very much so. It was meant to be a suggestion of flirting, and then it became more sexual than we expected because it seemed right. There was also a skeleton crew working because the rig could only take so much weight, so we were left very much on our own. And who wouldn't want to kiss Indira? I mean, come on. In the episode The Queen's Justice, fans finally get to see the highly anticipated meeting of Jon Snow and Daenerys face to face. This symbolizes the beginning of the end as the two stories merge, becoming a true song of ice and fire, as author George R.R. Martin had intended. The energy between Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke during the scene was so intense that the entire film crew found themselves lost in the moment, including the show's co-creators. Just so we're clear, film and TV sets are notorious for being boring, and yet the entire crew was captivated while filming the scene. The two meet in the audience chamber, which was built by Aegon Targaryen strictly to intimidate visitors. But before Jon can even step foot inside, he sees Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal soaring above Dragonstone. Clearly, Daenerys was trying to send Jon a message that she's someone who should be feared. It may have been their first time meeting on screen, but Kit and Emilia have actually been good friends since they met at a hotel bar in Belfast before the first season started filming. So the epic meeting scene may have been electrifying for those on set, but for the actors, it was a unique and challenging experience to know the world was watching two people meet for the first time, who have actually known each other for years. The most interesting aspect of these two characters meeting is the very different perspectives that they have toward each other. Here are the two key heroes of the story, and yet Jon refuses to bend the knee to Daenerys because he doesn't know or trust her judgment, and Daenerys looks at Jon as some ignorant bastard with made-up stories about the dead. According to Michelle Clapton, the chain Daenerys is wearing here represents a lesser version of a crown, and was meant to reflect the eagerness she displays in receiving the actual crown. The Siege of Casterly Rock scene was about highlighting how the invasion goes contrary to expectations. To illustrate this to the audience, Tyrion voices his plan as the scene plays out, at which point Jaime's hidden strategy is revealed, giving the Lannisters a leg up on Daenerys. Instead of a pointless battle sequence, the scene focuses on Jaime marching up to Olenna Tyrell to confront her about the invasion. They cover the outcome of the battle in just a few words. When Olenna asks if they fought well and Jaime responds with, "as well as could be expected," it hints towards the fact that the audience didn't miss anything. In the books, poison is referred to as a woman's weapon, and in relation to the series, the episode titled The Queen's Justice is a reference to the poison that Cersei uses on her enemies. This also serves as a reference to Olenna's final confession. The confession scene before Olenna's implied death was D.B. Weiss's favorite performance by actress Diana Rigg in the entirety of the show. The loot train attack scene in episode 4 was described by the cast and crew as someone bringing an F-16 to a medieval battle. It features Daenerys unleashed for the first time as she rides her dragon into battle with the Lannisters in a production even bigger than the infamous Battle of the Bastards. The focus of this battle sequence was chosen to be from Jaime's perspective because it's far more interesting and somewhat terrifying to watch the victim of a dragon attack trying to hold together his troops while the world literally burns around him. It was also a crucial component of the scene to highlight the complexity of Tyrion's emotions during the annihilation of the Lannister army. On one end is his queen, but on the other there's his brother whom he still loves dearly. The entire aim of that sequence was to confuse the audience in the hopes that they wouldn't know who to root for during that battle. This was emphasized through Jaime and Bronn's point of views in the midst of the chaos in the battlefield, the idea being that it ain't pretty conquering. According to co-executive producer Brian Cogman, it required a keen sense of attention just to track continuity for the battle scene of that caliber. To put it in perspective, 27 wagons were used, all dressed very specifically, and the set had to be reset constantly and dressed according to the camera movement. Not to mention the various stages of the battle had to be accounted for and the various perspectives involved. Let's just say all departments really had to deliver their A-game. That also means keeping track of what was burnt, half burnt, or fully engulfed in fire for every single prop on the set. To replicate that charred look, an eco-friendly black dye was sprayed onto the props, and in later stages, ash was used to dress the set to create a more authentic look. For coverage of the sequence, a total of 4 to 8 cameras were used, 3 different tracking vehicles, and 2 different airborne camera platforms that were able to mimic a dragon's point of view, which were also capable of movements of up to 70 miles per hour. The episode played with our emotions and even the audience's emotions when our beloved character Bronn shot Daenerys' #1 dragon, which is another fan favorite character. Jerome Flynn jokes that ever since the episode's premiere, not even his mailman speaks to him anymore. Well, you shouldn't have agreed to shoot that dragon, Flynn. The crew actually set stuntmen on fire for this sequence. In fact, they set a new record for setting the most stuntmen on fire for one sequence and setting the most on fire at one time. That's 73 body burns total in under 10 days and up to 20 guys at once. As if being set on fire wasn't hard enough, the stuntmen weren't allowed to breathe at all while on fire or else they'd breathe in flames. They had to hold their breath for the entire shot, totaling an average of about 30 seconds every take. In this episode, we also see Littlefinger gift the Valyrian steel dagger to Bran, the weapon used by a cat's paw assassin in season 1 for his attempted murder. The dagger was last seen on Ned Stark's desk, but after Littlefinger betrayed him, I guess he reclaimed it for himself. During this exchange, Littlefinger mentions chaos, to which Bran Stark replies, "Chaos is a ladder." This is a particularly unsettling message, as it was a direct quote from from Littlefinger to Varys during a private conversation back in Season 3. The 5th episode, Eastwatch, was originally titled Blood of the Dragon, which may have been too on the nose for the theme of the episode, as it refers to the idea of family bloodlines, as well as Jaime's own desire to literally spill the blood of Drogon. Following these family themes, many viewers pointed out that the visuals of Jaime's drowning sequence were very similar to Tyrion's drowning sequence in Season 5. Ironically, both were pulled to the shore by unlikely rescuers. Also in this episode, we finally see the return of everyone's favorite blacksmith, Gendry. The writers admit that they'd wanted the character to return for some time, but for them, it was a question of how and not why. Gendry has reprised his father's role as the Hammer Warrior. Looking back, this event was foreshadowed in the very first season when the character is introduced, hammering away in the shop. The character was so missed by fans during his absence that hysteria rose online a few years back. To calm everyone's nerves, actor Joe Dempsey actually tweeted to fans that his character was still rowing, a remark which prompted countless memes online. Since Davos was clearly Tyrion's only way into King's Landing, the writers decided that he should be the one to find Gendry, because of their previously established relationship in Season 3. Dempsey's still rowing tweet had become so famous that they actually wrote it into the 5th episode. When Davos finds Gendry, he says to him,
Thought you might still be rowing.
as a nod to the fans. While filming this scene, Emilia Clarke posted some hilarious behind-the-scenes footage of Kit Harington pretending to be a dragon. And, you know, as of this moment, it's slowly becoming a meme. While it makes sense that Jon would finally bend the knee to Daenerys, and what I mean by bending the knee in this sense, I mean asking her hand in marriage. On the opposing side, fans believe these two represent the end of old traditions. Davos instructs Gendry not to tell anyone about his lineage, but it's the first thing he does upon meeting Jon Snow. Joe Dempsey claims that it's because he felt a connection to Jon, but still, the actor found it so funny that he laughed out loud when he read the line for the first time. Another interesting reveal is that of Cersei announcing her pregnancy. Considering young Cersei's prophecy as told by the witch in Season 5, fans wonder if she's lying to Jaime, or if she'll die before the birth. Fans are raving at the idea that the producers have stuck a huge reveal during the quiet scene with Sam and Gilly at the Citadel. And that's the truth about Jon Snow's parents. During that particular scene, Gilly stumbles across an interesting factoid that Septon Maynard issued an annulment to Prince Rhaegar and remarried him to someone else. But she's cut off before saying any more. He married Lyanna Stark after all. And how did the fans react to this? Well, they're all angry at Sam for interrupting the scene. It's also revealed that the Citadel has a total of 15,782 steps, which has less to do with the plot, but is still pretty interesting. The hardest part about writing Episode 6 Beyond the Wall was determining how the Westerosi Suicide Squad could possibly survive their encounter with the Army of the Dead. Gradually, the writers came up with the idea to trap them on an island surrounded by whites. It was a real back and forth effort to decide who would join Jon on his mission outside the wall. The Dirty Dozen came to mind because everyone in that group has a reason to hate each other, so it made for the most interesting dynamic. There was a subtle throwback to Season 5's The Wars to Come, when Tormund quotes Jon's own words back to him. In reference to bending the knee to Dany, Tormund reminds Jon of the cost of pride, and how it was the end of King Mance Rayder. The Frozen Lake battle sequence took a whopping 5 weeks to shoot. The actors claimed it was like running a marathon in about 40 kilos of armor and steel. The scene was written to fool the audience into thinking one of their beloved characters was going to die. Probably a first for the show, which never fools around about killing our beloved characters. D.B. Weiss joked that, even though he co-wrote the episode, he couldn't help but fear for Tormund when he watched the sequence. Between shooting and rehearsals for this battle sequence, the group of actors bonded on set through music and the board game Risk. Apparently all the actors were very competitive, and they had to be pulled away from the game to shoot. There were so many kills in this sequence that there wasn't even time to choreograph them all individually. So instead, 7 movements were choreographed for each actor, so they could whip them out as they pleased against the stuntmen who knew how to react to each. Actor Christopher Evu claims that he follows the Rocky Balboa method from Rocky IV to get into the Tormund mindset. Apparently that includes a lot of downtime in nature and chopping wood and whatnot. You know, wildling stuff. Richard Dormer, who plays Beric Dondarrion, said that they used real fire in his sword, with 0 CG enhancements. He even had to make an effort to move the sword 20% slower so that the flames wouldn't go out during filming. In order to hold an active flame for 2 minutes, Beric's sword prop weighs 3 times as much as a regular sword. The actor describes it as more of a club than a sword. According to George R.R. Martin, Beric may be resurrected 6 times no less, but he's no longer alive. He's just as dead as the whites, and the plan was for him to become less and less human over time. At Comic-Con a few years back, when asked what he'd like to see happen in the final season, Dormer said that he wanted to see Beric and his flaming sword on the back of a dragon. Oddly enough, his wish came true a season early. For the actor's next prediction, Dormer claimed he wants Beric to fight one of 2 people, the Night King or the Mountain, although he felt like he might have a better chance facing off against the Mountain. Yeah, the Night King didn't turn out so hot. The white that the Hound carried through most of the sequence was no dummy. That was an actual guy up on his back. Supposedly, Rory McCann injured his knee during his sudden stop on the lake when the ice first started to break. When Jon emerges from the icy water after the battle, the direwolf pommel on Longclaw seems to open its eye. This supposed detail caused an uproar of new theories on social media. Unfortunately, all of the theories were debunked when episode director Alan Taylor admitted he had no idea what people were talking about. As it turns out, the eye was just frosted over and it cleared off once Jon splashed water onto it. The showrunners loved to mess with their fans' emotions. The most fun they had in this episode then was teasing that all of the good guys would get away scot-free, only for the Night King to come in and take down Viserion. They planned this twist because they knew the emotional impact it would have over the audience. The writers decided to bring back Cold Hands Benjen because he worked with the scene's compressed time frame. His face alone provided the emotional connection that they needed to convince Jon Snow of his next move. The final deciding factor behind Benjen's return was that it felt like the most satisfying way to end his storyline, while justifying his life's purpose to the audience. Many fans voiced their confusion over the time span of the episode, including questioning how fast Gendry ran back to Eastwatch, got a raven to Dragonstone, and summoned Dany and her dragons up north. Director Alan Taylor admitted that the chronology is a bit hazy, but felt that it shouldn't be the main concern for the audience. If it makes detail-oriented fans feel better though, Taylor did say that Twilight Beyond the Wall is much longer, so the Jon Snow Suicide Squad's wait for Dany could have been much more than standard night. Fans can't help but wonder why Cersei's hair had been kept short ever since it was shaved off in season 5. Many believe it's symbolic of her progression to power, now that she resembles her father Tywin, outfits and all. This season has been repeatedly targeted by a group of hackers that refer to themselves as the Mr. Smith Group. The group stole 1.5 terabytes of footage from the company's servers and were ransoming it for 250,000 bitcoins. The hackers leaked episode 4 of the season and threatened to leak the season finale as well. But Balls of Valyrian Steel HBO claimed that they would not pay the ransom nor play their games. Because of the delayed schedule this season, the showrunners claimed that fans may not see season 8 until 2019. But we'll have a better idea of the time frame once the showrunners complete the production schedule. In our season 6 fact video, we mentioned all of the spin-off possibilities that HBO is considering for the show. Screenwriter Jane Goldman, who's involved with the potential series, has now claimed that it could be based on an event that we're all familiar with. So, could it be Robert's Rebellion? The Fall of Valyria? Let us know in the comments below what you think. A little bit after the 6th episode of the season aired, an image circulated around the internet showing a truck in the background of the White Walker sequence. Many thought this was a mistake during filming, however it was debunked immediately after, explaining to everyone that it was actually from Inside the Thrones and not the actual episode. In an interview with Michelle Clapton, it was revealed that Daenerys' white fur coat seen in Beyond the Wall was meant to mirror Viserys and the clothing he wore in season 1. Fans, however, found it to be an homage to Viserion, the dragon she lost in that same episode. While not particularly noticeable in the show, Viserion was described as cream and gold in the books, similar to Dany's white fur coat. While on the topic of Daenerys' clothing, you can see that she's adopted the look of House Targaryen, red and black. A lot of the clothes she wears throughout the season reflect her Targaryen lineage, and similar to her white fur coat, the shape is a callback to the shape of Viserys' clothing in season 1. One of the major themes of this season, according to D.B. Weiss, is character arcs and changes of heart. The Dragon and the Wolf embodies that theme most of all because all the main characters are changed in some way by the events of this episode. The Dragon Pit sequence is referred to as the scene of the season, but it's also dubbed one of the most essential scenes in the entire series. It was very complicated to film. The scene took several days because there was an exhausting amount of character coverage they felt was absolutely necessary. Since most fans already figured out Jon Snow was actually a Targaryen and rightful heir to the Iron Throne, that made it challenging for them to present this info in a new exciting way. As an added element to this reveal, they decided to intercut the scene of Jon and Dany with flashbacks of his parents' wedding to literally illustrate the information bomb they're about to receive. The writers have been very mindful contrasting every season end scene, so while last season ended on a triumphant note for Dany, this one is much more horrific and hopeless for everyone. This epic season finale end scene had been planned for many years now. The creators knew that the only thing that could penetrate that wall and let the White Walkers in was a dragon, a dead dragon. Now the bigger question is it breathing blue flames or ice? This video was written and edited in real time as the episodes premiered, and is the first and only video to be done this way by Cinematica and Frederator.
And to wrap it all up, let's take a look at some of the best ways to do what Game of Thrones does best: kill people. Well, in truth, we're gonna watch ways that Game of Thrones can kill you. Yes, you, the one watching right now. Watch your back. This is the top 8 worst ways Game of Thrones can kill you.
Welcome to Westeros, one of the 4 continents of the known world and home of the 7 kingdoms. You can enjoy a run amongst the direwolves in the north or go south to sample the fine wines of Dorne. Visit the Mother House in Old Town if you're looking to find your faith in the 7. Or if the nightlife is more your scene, there's always the brothels. Chief exports include snow, iron, and death. Hey everyone, I'm Tim with Cinematica, and today we'll be reflecting on the absolute worst ways to die in their world, since death is pretty much built into the show's name. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And let's let's just say there's not a whole lot of winning happening. So get ready, because Cinematica is counting down the 8 worst ways to die on Game of Thrones. Oh, and quick warning, if you're not caught up through season 5, shame. And second of all, spoilers are everywhere. Number 8, death by crossbow. We'll start small because this is going to get real grim real fast. Crossbows are standard fare in Westeros. We imagine that every time winter comes, some little Westerosi Ralphie from A Christmas Story begs his parents for one, only to hear about how he'll shoot his eye out. Now, getting shot by a speeding arrow must suck big time, but we think the main reason that death by crossbow is so bad because they're so accessible. It can happen anywhere. Everyone just sort of has them, so you can never really be sure when an arrow is heading your way. I mean, just look at Tywin. He's going about his nefarious business, masterminding the whole monarchy from behind the scenes, and fooling around with his reject imp son's one true love. Then he decides to take a bathroom break. As he does, then bam! Tyrion bursts in with a crossbow yelling about something or other and shoots him. That's crazy. Can't a man sit on his throne in peace? And let's not forget about Ross, who Littlefinger donated to Joffrey during his blossoming psychopathy phase so he could try something new and daring with her. I'm sure we all remember how well that ended. Moral of the story, before taking off your pants, check the room for crossbows. It's just a good habit. Number 7, death by moon door. Okay, hold on now. Whose terrifying idea was this? A massive trap door in the middle of the High Hall of Eyrie that drops you from a mountaintop, and they let this little Oedipal nightmare decide who dies? What sadistic bastard dreamed up this feature? And we're talking about Game of Thrones, so we're using bastard in its correct context. And what architect did they get to install this? Do you have to get, like, moon door insurance? There are a lot of questions, but what is unquestionable is that death by moon door is one of the most uniquely frightening deaths in Game of Thrones. Perhaps because this is such a fantastical world, and falling hundreds of feet to your demise is such an unfantastical way to go out. If you don't think so, you could always ask Sir Vardis Egan. Only wait, no you can't. Bronn kicked him hundreds of feet to his death. Talk about adding insult to injury, and then probably more injury. Death by moon door is especially bad because the last thing you're likely to see is Lisa Arryn being sucked by her far too old to still be doing that son, Robin. Make the bad man fly, he'll say. No wonder the kid is so messed up. He's been growing up around this madness his whole life. Number 6, death by the mountain. Speaking of mountain deaths, death by the mountain is a rather grisly fate as well. First, you have to figure out which the mountain you're dealing with, because at this point, he's been played by 3 different actors. I personally consider the season 4 mountain to be the scariest, but I don't think it matters all that much what his face looks like when he's got a grip on you. I'd worry more about your own face. The mountain is the quintessential brute. All bite and not much bark, and you don't want to get on his bad side. Way back in season 1, he decapitated his own horse in front of a crowd of men, women, and children just because he lost a jousting tournament. If that seems temperamental, as a child he shoved the hound's face into a fire because the hound played with one of his toys without permission. And need I bring up the Viper versus the Mountain? I didn't think so. Number 5, death by White Walker. It's been the focal point of dozens of horror movies, George A. Romero's entire career, and would be the singular item on the list, the worst way to die on The Walking Dead, namely death by zombie. Only Game of Thrones has stepped it up a notch by making them into sentient ice zombies, hence death by White Walker. They're everything you ever feared about zombies. The gnawing, the clawing, the reanimation, but colder. When they first came onto the scene, we didn't really think they were much of a threat, just sort of background noise in a bigger game. Slowly, we noticed them coming up more and more, and as much as we tried to laugh it off, it's still a bit concerning. It's the attack on the Free Folk village that solidified this death spot on our list, bringing with it some of the most shocking, brutal, and nerve-wracking deaths of the whole show. We were excited to see the German a cappella chick from Pitch Perfect 2 pop up in season 5, thinking that maybe she and Jon Snow would hit it off and he could find love again. Instead, what she found were ice zombies, decomposing child ice zombies. I'm not much of a romance expert, but I think that's the opposite of love. Number 4, death by beheading. It's very easy to lose your head in Game of Thrones. As early as the first episode, we see Ned Stark behead an AWOL member of the Night's Watch, and watching it happen is like a rite of passage for his son Bran. Then, as the karmic tables turned, Ned himself was beheaded by the end of the season, arguably the most defining death of the entire series. It was the death that proved that anyone can and would die, and it really got heads rolling. No, seriously, beheading after beheading came after that. A lot of the time, they were performed by someone trying to prove a point. Theon decapitates Sir Roderick during his hostile takeover of Winterfell to assert dominance. Robb cuts Karstark's cranium off after he murdered 2 boys, even though he was advised not to. Dany has Dario take off Massador's head to prove that no one is above the law. Joffrey kept a whole collection of heads on pikes in King's Landing, using them to antagonize Sansa. Well, maybe Joffrey's just a little murder ball. But basically, if you want to keep your head firmly on your shoulders, do not stand in the way of someone and their insecurities. It'll go right fight to their head and yours. Number 3, Death by Fire. The book series that inspired Game of Thrones was called A Song of Ice and Fire. With the White Walkers, we covered Death by Ice, so now it's time for Death by Fire. Whether it's being burned at the stake or being fireballed by a rampant dragon, death by fire is among one of the worst ways to die. We were all crushed by a farmer bringing his daughter Hasia's charred bones for Daenerys to see. Then fans lost it last season when Stannis Baratheon burned his daughter alive as a sacrifice. It's been called the most disturbing moment of the show. Stannis, buddy. What are you doing? When the Night's Watch set Mance Rayder ablaze earlier that season, Jon Snow couldn't stand idly by and watch him suffer. How could someone bear to watch their enemies be burned alive, much less their own daughter? Number 2, Death by Poverty. We can debate all day about how honor gets people killed, or how ruthless politics can catch up with you. Beheading is scary, but you wouldn't feel the impact for very long. By the most gruesome estimates, you'll suffer less than a minute. Even a festering crossbow wound will do you in within a few days, if not faster. But do you know what people like Tywin Lannister and Ned Stark have in common? Coats. Winter in this world can last for a long time. Food stores can run out, and people can get left in the cold with nothing to eat. Getting burned alive will ruin your night, but it's nothing compared to feeling your body try and eke out nutrients from the shoes you've been forced to eat while frostbite claims your now exposed feet, wondering what you did to make the Seven hate you so much. And none of this fighting will change anything for the peasant. Doesn't matter who sits on the Iron Throne if you're broke, and surprise, winter now lasts for 10 years. In Game of Thrones, you win or you die, but the poor commoners were never going to win. Ever. Truly a terrible way to go. And number 1, Death by Wedding. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, it isn't news to you that you should always turn down an invitation to a wedding. Weddings are undoubtedly the most lethal activity in the Seven Kingdoms, and that's including the jousting tournaments and marine fighting pits. Like Magister Illyrio said, a Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered a dull affair. And we're thinking that applies to more people than just the Dothraki. Let's not forget the Red Wedding. We know the North remembers. Never again will we be able to listen to the Rains of Castamere without shedding a single sad tear. It's a day that lives on in internet infamy. The Red Wedding brought us the sudden murders of Robb Stark, his wife Talissa, his child, who could have been named Ned if it was a boy, and lived, his mother Catelyn, and his direwolf Greywind. Side note, some of those deaths double as crossbow deaths, which harkens back to the earlier point. There are literally no safe places from crossbows. Please always check for crossbows. Then there was the Purple Wedding, which saw Joffrey's death and set Tyrion up to be executed. Do people in Westeros actually understand what weddings are? Because I'm kind of thinking they don't. Even a wedding that doesn't end in countless deaths at the ceremony doesn't stay deathless for long. Both of the men who've gotten married to Daenerys, Khal Drogo and Hizdahr Zalorak, have ended up dead as well. Death is certainly the leading export of Westeros, and marriage might just be the #1 killer. There has never been a better case for staying single.
And would you look at that, we made it. 770 Game of Thrones facts and a whole bunch of ways to die. Do you feel like a true Westeros scholar? What did you think of the marathon? Did you learn anything new that you're gonna insert in that casual conversation from now on? Make sure you let us know down in the comments and subscribe to Cinematica for more like this. Thanks for watching.